Welcome back to another episode of Backlog Crew. My name is Kurt, and I'm here with Ryder and John.
Hello.
All right, so today we're doing a game called Who's Lila? This game came out in 2023, I believe late 2023. Nope, I'm wrong. This game came out in February 2022. I only heard about it in late 2023, and it made me really want to play it. It's a Russian independent game by Garage Heathen. I'm on their Wikipedia page for the game right now, and there's not a Wikipedia page for that studio. So as far as I know, this is the only thing that they've done. Um, the basic premise of this game is it's a horror game, kind of an adventure style horror game where you play as a character who cannot control their facial expressions very well. So the main gameplay is point and click adventure and also the face stretching mini game from Mario 64. And knowing nothing else about this game, I was like, well, I got to play this. And it seems like the kind of game that I want to talk to people about. So that's why I dragged you two into this. So before we go into it any further, just tell me your overall thoughts on being tasked to play this game.
Go ahead, Ryder. I'll go second.
Um, the so when you first sent the message about it, I looked it up. Actually, no, let me rewind. I read your description, and I was like, I have absolutely no clue what to make of this. It just didn't make any sense to me. I was thinking of, obviously visualizing the Mario face stretching thing, and I was like, oh, does that play into an actual game, like a full-length game? And then, of course, I went and watched a trailer on it, and it was unsettling to watch the trailer. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm interested enough. I'll do this. And so I was like, I got to commit to this regardless if it looks a little strange or not. I'm going to play it just for the sake of playing a video game and discussing it with the boys. I don't really know if I had any concrete thoughts other than I'm going to play it. Looks interesting. And that was pretty much it. So I went in fairly blind and was pleasantly surprised.
Okay. John, what about you?
So you told me about this game after we were considering a different game, and I was just like, sure, yeah, sounds good. Don't care what game we pick. I'm happy to try it out. And the only thing I seen was the pictures in the on the Steam page. I didn't actually go watch the trailers or the videos or anything, and I was just like, yep, we'll just give it a go, see what happens. It's just the weird faces you can see in the pictures on the Steam page was the only thing I had to go off of, like contorted smiles and faces and eyebrows and stuff, and I was very confused of what I was getting into, and well, basically I just had that going with me the entire time.
And the payoff?
The payoff?
Was it just overall positive, negative vibes?
Positive vibes for this, yeah,
Okay.
for sure, yeah. I enjoyed
Good.
it.
I played this game for about 2 hours the first time, took a few days off, and I just couldn't stop thinking, what if they just hate this? Because this is a really weird game. And then every time I stopped playing, I just thought that was a really weird hour or two that I just played. And I wonder if they're going to have these same feelings.
I am going to let you know that I stopped myself, but I was going to message our group and be like, Kurt, what have you got me playing? Because of what happened in the game, it didn't seem like a very Kurt game.
It's not.
No.
It's not. So for context, I don't really do horror. Okay. The only horror games that I've played that I have enjoyed playing is I played the original Resident Evil 4, and I played the Alan Wake series, and I really like those. But those aren't like terrifying. But I was watching a video by a guy on YouTube named Jacob Geller. He makes really great video essays about games and about other stuff too. You guys should check him out. But he was talking about different kinds of horror, and he talked about Amnesia: The Bunker that came out last year, and the way that made you feel fear by you having a lot of power in that game, but the resources, like you had a gun and you could use it to shoot a monster, but also the gun was the only thing you could use to open doors because you would shoot the locks off. And anyway, so it's like resource management, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm not gonna play it. That looks terrifying. And then he was like, the next game I want to talk about is Who's Lila? You stretch the guy's face, and then I just paused the video. I was like, well, I'm going to play that. And it's just such a
Here we
unique
are.
mechanic. Yeah,
Yeah.
here we are, months later. It's just such a unique mechanic that I couldn't get it out of my head that I wanted to play it, even though it's really not a genre that I'm into.
So you went over the premise of the game and what you're going to be doing. But I'm gonna ask, and just gonna bring it up now. It's a fairly short game, and
Yeah.
but it has repeatability, so you can learn more. I was gonna ask, how long did you guys end up playing the game in total?
See if Steam will tell me that.
And
Somebody else go first.
yeah, I was gonna say, to kill time, I can tell you I played in total 8.3 hours for the game.
5.7 hours.
Um, Who's Lila? I played for 4.4 hours, so you guys
Okay.
might have gotten the more
Okay.
complete experience than me. Because this is a game with multiple endings, and you can get the first ending within like 10 minutes, realistically. And then there's a lot of endings that you can get that way, but then there gets a point where you're in the minutia things. Okay, what small change can I make in how I'm going through the story?
Yeah, no kidding.
Let's cut here. My computer restarted on its own. I don't know.
You're good. You're good. I'll edit this out.
John, just when you're going through it, make the best cut you can make. You can even keep in a little bit of the part of me being like, yeah, my computer crashed, and then let's make a cut, and then just
It fits the theme. Just like have it like really like choppy like edits like in and out.
I recorded something with Joe one time, and I just put up one of those like rainbow technical difficulties with
Yeah.
like some funky video game song underneath it, so you can whatever, be creative, have fun, or just make it a super simple cut, whatever you want to do, man.
Lila.
So since this game's really non-linear, you can go a lot of different ways. Like we were saying earlier, you can get different endings in a matter of minutes sometimes. I have a 12-page document where I sort of documented step by step what I did for each of my playthroughs. So in total, I did about 12 unique playthroughs of this game. And we're just going to start there. You guys can chime in if you're like, oh, I did something different on my first run, or I did that too, but it was later in the game. We can just talk about it.
Okay.
So booting up the game, the very first thing I did is, well, the very first thing that happens is the main character, his name is William, looks at you and says something along the lines of, "My name is William. I have a hard time showing emotions every day I practice in the mirror." And so I walked into the bathroom and looked in the mirror, and it's basically just like a tutorial. There's a little guide that you can grab from like the medicine cabinet in the bathroom that shows you how to make different facial expressions. But you're literally like grabbing his lips and like stretching them out, or grabbing his eyes and raise them. You can even like grab his nose and like pull his nostrils or his chin down. There's a lot of stuff. There's like 9 main emotions you can display. And there's a timer. So that's where the challenge comes in.
Oh, no.
Is people will be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And you have a time limit to make an appropriate reaction, either to not look like a weirdo or to deceive them. And then later in the game, when it gets supposed to be a little bit trickier, he'll start making different expressions that don't match the situation at all, and you have to like fight against them as the timer's going on. So he'll just start like, somebody will be really happy and tell you something sweet, and you'll start like snarling your face, and you got to kind of grab that lip and tuck it back down. It's a really disturbing image. Let's just right there on the main mechanics. What did y'all think about the playability of the main mechanic of moving the face around?
I think it's a lot of fun. I mean, the first, when I first started this, I played for like maybe 30 minutes and then stopped because and this isn't because of the mechanics of the face as much as the slow walking and the graphics were just kind of a turn off. Wasn't feeling it that day. I picked it back up last night when I had some spare time and just fell straight into it. I thought it was so much fun being able to mess around with his face. And of course, the first time I played it, I was taking it so seriously and trying to react in the ways that I thought were most appropriate for each situation. And it's really fun because I'm sorry, it's hard not to like go off into the weeds a little bit
Go for it.
because it's just the game is not linear, like you said. But without knowing the story, because the game just throws you in, and it doesn't explain anything, because part of the fun is you getting to learn who William is, what William knows, what William doesn't know, what he did, what he didn't do, and whether or not he actually did or didn't do it.
Right.
Just like there's so many different convoluted layers, and so the response that you might think is appropriate to a question that seems like something a normal person would do, and you're supposed to be acting like a normal person, is in fact actually not the correct response, because these people know that you're lying, you know? And so like it's a lot of fun, but like you said, there are some moments that cause like extreme anxiety almost,
Mhm.
as I'm like responding to a question that I know is potentially going to get me in hot water. And the immediate reaction is, Will starts
Yeah, just like freaking
just
out.
like smiling. You're like, no, like stop, like trying to force his face into the correct position. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a really, really interesting concept. I don't want to go too far into it, because we'll talk about later some like maybe my frustrations that are not necessarily a huge deal, but I do think are something I do want to discuss later. But overall, really, really cool concept. That there's no dialogue choices, but the face itself is
That's the choice, baby.
determines the dialogue. I mean, sometimes it will change your response, though.
For sure.
Yep.
You oh, John, go ahead if you have something to add.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just some of the funny parts are like you said, whenever you don't actually know who you're talking to, but they know you. So like a conversation that didn't matter, for example, when you walk into one of the buildings, the guy says, "Oh, well, finally you show up to this place. You show up to school for once." And so the first time I had this conversation, I smiled at the guy because I thought it was a joke one of your friends would make to you. And the guy, I smiled at him. He's like, "Why are you smiling?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I guess I don't know this person. Okay, not a joke. They were insulting me.
Like,
Okay,
oh, I'm being bullied.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Yeah.
It kind of makes you feel like Will, though,
Right,
because
yeah.
he doesn't know how to react to things, so you can
Neither
kind
do
of
we. Yeah,
role play more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So-
really interesting just being like dropped right in the middle of the story.
right. And piecing it together. Yeah.
Because you go on to discover, like, even like the very first thing that happens after you kind of do that tutorial is you get a phone call. Um, hey, meet me at the train station. And then you go meet the guy at the train station. Did you guys do that first thing?
No, I went to school.
Interesting. So I immediately just went to the train station because they gave me a call that was like, hey, go to the train station. I was like, all right, cool. You meet a guy named Strutnev. Great name. He says, Father Lawrence has died. He left a package for you. He also says Lila has stopped talking to him. And then you have to make a face to react to that. And when I'm making this face, I'm like, am I sad? Am I excited? Am I scared? Like, I don't know this person. I don't know who Father Lawrence is. I don't know who Lila is. And then Strutnev starts like threatening you and saying that you stole Lila from him, and it culminates in this like, I guess you'd call it somewhere between a stealth sequence and a chase sequence.
Yeah.
That was
You stole his girlfriend. You know.
by far the clunkiest part of this game for me, and I got really worried because I was like, my first 10 minutes, I was like, oh no, this plays really bad because it's just it's like point and click to where you want your character to walk, and there's no like
Loops.
mechanics to try to do stealth. There's no sprint, so I'm like trying to run from this guy. But did y'all have any reactions to that sequence?
Nothing too crazy. I do find it interesting that uh, it makes you finish that once you start it, unless you want to start over. So if he catches you, it puts you back at a checkpoint before you start that sequence. So,
It's one of the few times that has a checkpoint instead of just an auto fail.
I think I found 3 of them in total, and that is one of them. So, but I did find it interesting. You had to keep doing it unless you just started all the way over.
I think with that, I really, really appreciated when I got to that point, because I'd already had 4 endings, I think, before I got to that point. And so
I think it was
I already... Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
See, already, like, I picked up on some of the lore and some of the background knowledge. And so I was just already on edge because I've been playing enough and I knew enough about what was going on with this occult, you know, society that you're apparently a part of, and the fire. I already know a little bit about this. And then, to meet Stripnev, and I'm like, this dude, like, I already know, like, the way he's talking, this is not going to be a good thing. And then, of course, he asked you if Lila's still talking to you. I made a sad face. No, Lila's not talking to me. And he sees right through it. And I'm assuming,
Yeah. Yeah, you're assuming what?
I'm assuming that there is some way that you can maybe get around it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there is or isn't, because I played little under 6 hours. I think I hit 10 out of the 15 or 16 endings.
Mm-hmm.
But that I was so anxious when he was chasing me. I don't know if Kurt, you felt that because it was so early in the game. You're probably more thinking like, "Wow, this plays like crap." I was kind of used to the controls at that point, so I was just like immediately feeling like sheer terror. Him like chasing me.
It was spooky because like the music was spooky and the atmosphere was spooky and like a guy was chasing me, but I had like no context for it. So I was like, I don't know
What
why
is
this
happening?
guy's trying to kill me. There's no stakes right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to get out of here. And I made it through my first try. So it's not like it was overly difficult. It just felt really clunky and it felt like I should have failed a few times and just didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the section, Stripnev gets eaten, question mark, by the Empress.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna be honest, still not 100% sure what the Empress is and what that character is.
If we're doing it, I think she's Lila's mother.
Okay.
Isn't she like a demon goddess type thing? I don't know. There's some cosmic horror elements in this.
Oh,
Like,
definitely. Let's build off this. So that Empress eats Strupnev and then says Lila must cease, and then gives Will the code 43033, and then that's the end. It just cuts back to the title screen. And I just checked through my notes, and I don't know that I found what that code was for.
that is an
Say that again.
address.
Say that again. What was the?
Oh, is that an address 43033?
Oh yeah. That's the address.
Oh, that's the apartments.
That's the burn. That's Father Lawrence's burned apartment, right?
And it shows up as question marks because you don't know where it is exactly. And then her telling you that gives you the other numbers you're missing to go there.
That's right. Okay, I did do that then. There were there's a lot of hidden codes in this game.
Yeah.
And
No
kidding. There's some that I still didn't find. I just decided not to look them up. But like the diary, you find a diary in his house, and he's like, "This is my diary. Of course I know the passcode." I don't know the passcode, Will. Did any of you guys figure out the passcode?
I never opened the diary.
So I did look that one up.
That's fine.
Because I didn't open it.
Yeah,
but that was one of the last things I did. I looked it up, and I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure you have to get into like the Steam like demo, and it's like somewhere in there. That's what like I might be wrong.
I have some,
but
of those
it doesn't
for later.
surprise me because there's a couple of these things that like I did find on my own, and I was like, props to me, I guess. But like,
no kidding.
Like how on earth did this guy come to this? It was so creative. There's ways of like implementing things in and outside of the game to change your playthroughs.
All right. So when you start the game, you're given two different paths to take, and then those continue to branch off and branch off. So we just went over option 1, or option 2, I'm going to call it, which was the train station, right? And then it gives you a additional information to continue on to somewhere else. Do we want to go down that path and see it through to the end, or do we want to jump to branch number 1 now?
Let me just say that, man, I think.
Or I can.
No, what do y'all want to do? There's two of you. What do y'all want to do?
I was going to say, I can, since we've already went over the Empress, I can go through my first playthrough if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay, so does that help?
Y'all just take a round of doing our first playthrough.
I was going to say that might be the easiest because no matter what we do on the first playthrough, it's going to be pretty concise to what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So your option, if you don't follow through with the phone call you receive, is that you also get a cell phone call. Does anyone remember the wording of the cell phone call? Because there's a cell phone sitting right next to your home phone, and it tells you, "Let me."
Lila, please. I beg you. Let me back in.
You let me back, and it's a male voice, and it says,
Oh,
"Let
it's
me
a
back."
male voice.
Yeah, you
I
can.
just all I have written down about the cell phone is maybe Lila, but if,
Okay.
if it was obviously a male voice to you, then I probably just wasn't paying enough attention.
So I'm assuming it's Will.
it is.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh.
Wait, you didn't know
Like,
that? Okay.
the
So
but like, well, I'd forgotten that it happened because I didn't do the cell phone. Like, I
so
didn't answer the phone after my first playthrough, so the cell phone thing
oh,
didn't happen. So I
okay.
just had forgotten that happened, but that's so obvious now.
So
There's so many layers to this,
right.
though.
Yeah. It's like an onion. All right. So
It's like an ogre.
so after you get the phone call and then the cell phone call saying please let me back, you go into your kitchen and there's a few different things you can interact with, and it puts little light bulbs on the screen to let you know these are things you can interact with. And one of the main things you have to do before you leave the house on every single playthrough is you have to take out the trash. And there's other few mentionables in your house. There's a newspaper talking about a fire, but it goes into hardly any detail because it's indiscernible what they're talking about. And then there's a hacksaw on your counter for woodworking,
Yeah.
and your journal that we talked about that has a lock on it. And so you take out your trash. You can talk to the concierge at the front if you'd like. And you just go outside, take out your trash, and you have the options, like we said, about either going to school or going to the train station. So, but in taking the school path, you can go in the front and you see, before you get to school, you actually see some papers on the wall that talk about a missing girl named Tanya Kennedy. And so that ends up being the forefront of this story, is that Tanya Kennedy has gone missing. And when you arrive at school, you meet up with a group of her friends. And
So
yeah,
I want to pipe in just real quick.
go ahead.
So after I went to the train station, my second playthrough, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to the school now. And I walk into the school, and I couldn't figure out how to get out of the front lobby of the
Yeah.
school. Like, I spent a good 15 minutes just walking around talking to everyone. I was like, there's got to be something more in the school. Nothing. There's like one small place that you're supposed to click that gets you closer to a door, and then
Yeah.
you can click on the door. And I just didn't do that. So I just left, and then I went to the apartments. And so that's why I did not do the school story until my final session with the game, like my
Wow.
last hour and a half.
Okay.
So it's, yeah. So I might have
Okay.
missed a lot. I don't know, but
So
anyway. I felt dumb about that. But continue. You're a smart person. You figured out the door.
so before I continue, Ryder, which option did you do for your first playthrough? Did you go to the school or the train station?
Nah, I went to the school.
Okay. So the first thing that happens when you get to the school, you can see there's trophies and a trophy case detailing that Tanya Kennedy is a very studious student, lack of a better word, and she has a lot of awards in that trophy case. And so there's a lot of people in the hallways. You can talk to them with just general info they give you about the school and how they get lost because the rooms change every time they go in and out of them for some reason. Strange, right? So
A weird mechanic.
yeah, but then you meet the guy in the hallway that tells you that someone's actually looking for you, and someone went to go see the principal. And I'm trying to get those names really quick.
Martha is meeting the principal.
Regina
then-
told you about what was going on.
Oh,
Mhm.
you haven't hit them just yet, because this is the guy in the hallway that I was saying. He's like,
Oh,
you-
that's Matt.
You finally showed
Matt
up
really-
for
Matt.
school. Yeah, and
Because it
Party
was
boy
his
Matt.
house that the party was at.
yeah, and Michael is the one that's looking for you. So we're supposed to be prepared to see Michael. But didn't
That's
sound
a
like a
kicker
good
coupon.
connotation there. But
Mm-mm-mm.
then you walk down the hall and you
Happy.
actually meet Tanya's friends, who ask you, "Hey, where is Tanya? Because you were the last person that was seen with her."
Mm-mm.
That's what they claim.
Mm-mm.
Riders role playing.
So yeah, William immediately starts smiling, and you have to combat that whenever you're talking about someone you know is missing. And if this is your first time manipulating the face,
Allegedly, no.
After the tutorial, it's very hard to move that face off of a smile.
Right.
If this is your very first timed encounter, and you look like an idiot in front of them, and they just think you're stupid.
So you did smile through that
I tried
accidentally.
I don't remember what I ended up with, but it was not a neutral expression or a sad face.
So
I'm pretty sure I smiled.
What happens when you do that?
They just look at you like, you think this is funny? Tanya's missing.
Yeah, they say that like almost exactly like,
Yeah.
this isn't a joke, Will. And you're like, let me do that.
You're like, who's joking? He.
Yeah.
And so
You really have to be aggressive. You have to. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off,
No, you're
like
fine. You're fine.
in the tutorial in the mirror, you don't realize, I think, how forceful you have to be with the facial expressions. There's no real urgency unless you redo it, and you can slowly like drag and click. But like that first conversation, it goes, here we go, and like you have to like click and like drag, click, drag.
Facts,
You can't waste time.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you'll be seeing that right over here. But anyway, so they'll continue asking you, but you deflect all the questions, and you just get down to, where is Martha? And they say that, or you ask because you know she's at the principal's office, and they tell you that she's no longer at the principal's office. She's on the roof. So at that point, you're free to continue up to the additional classrooms upstairs, where you are attempting to find Martha's classroom in order to find her keys and her address. But you're not
normal high school dude things.
you're not explained why you're finding these things in the first playthrough, obviously. So and then you have an option, instead of going upstairs, there's a boiler room right there, and if you walk in, somebody says to you, access to the boilers is not permitted. And then he says, just kidding, Lila. I know. He says, all right, well, if you listen, you can hear the pass through the boilers. And what are you going to do about the other thing in the boilers? And then Will answers back that he shouldn't be asking questions that don't concern him. And so you have the options to continue to the boilers or head upstairs. So naturally, I went to the boilers to see what was going on, because I wanted.
Before you go any further,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, how did you just like really glazed over the whole fact that he calls you Lila?
Well, I glazed over it because I didn't know what that meant at the time.
Yeah, okay.
Like, what's going on? How does he know?
Yeah,
like, what
okay,
do we
exactly.
know? Yeah.
And that's why I was like, what?
Yeah, right. Wasn't it obvious to you
So-
at that point?
Should have been.
See, but like, I still thought, like, while I was doing that I thought it was a nickname, you know? Like, at the time, because I didn't know anything about the name
Sure.
Lila, I thought it was a nickname. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the cop says at the end of the game. So, you know.
Yeah.
For
So,
like 1 second, maybe I thought that, like, because I knew I did look up that this was a Russian developer, and was thinking like maybe that's something that, I don't know, like some type of code name type thing. I don't know what this could be, but I didn't take it literally the first time.
right, exactly. So you get to that boiler room, and I completely ignored going upstairs to deal with Martha. I wanted to know what was going on in the boiler room. And so you literally have to stand in the doorways, and the music for the game, which is amazing music, by the way, beautiful atmospheric music. And whichever one is louder in your ear is the path you take. And though there's a few different junctions you have to go through, but ultimately there's nothing of note in these different passageways. There is a color palette you can pick up in there near some pipes, but other than that, you just make your way through. And then out of nowhere is a jump scare that just screams in your ears and says, close your eyes. Fun fact, if you don't close your eyes fast enough, you die, and that's the ending of your first playthrough, which is what happened
There
to
you
me.
Congratulations, bud. Didn't get that ending.
You didn't?
I did not. I closed my eyes like a man.
So
Fair enough.
That was my second playthrough. I think that I went through the boiler room and kept my eyes open.
That
First
was
time,
my fourth one.
so I went to the boiler room my second playthrough and listened to what the janitor, I'm assuming that's who he is, maintenance
Mhm.
man, tells you, and I just started randomly clicking through and just looped through, and because I just wasn't paying attention, and I was just going like room to room to room, and then all of a sudden it kicks you back out to the janitor,
When you pick the wrong one.
and I'm like, okay, so I tried going back, and then it just loops you right back, and you can never go back in that playthrough. It closes you off from that
No, that's not
loop.
true.
No.
You can go back.
You sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just gotta follow the music, and I think it might change the
Yeah, it does
room you go through.
re-randomize. Yeah.
Well, see, because I did it like 3 times, and I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it just got to where it was just looping me straight back. Like I'd go in, and it was just like a single entryway, and it would just send me right back to the entrance.
I did
They
have
would
a few that did that, but
They would reuse the rooms. Like you have to go through like 7 or 8 rooms, but there's only like 5 visually unique rooms.
no, what he's saying is he actually got sent back where the janitor is.
Yeah, I'm saying like I go through from the janitor room into the next room, and all of a sudden there's like 1 or 2 rooms that only have one
Yeah.
pathway.
Yeah.
It would send me straight to that, and I'd click, and it'd send me straight back out to the janitor.
I had
like
a few
there's
that
no.
did that. I
I
think
got
it was a
nothing for
mistake.
that. I don't know. Yeah, it could just
Which
be like a bug.
It could have been, because I did read there's quite a few broken,
I actually found one
soft lock
myself.
type things.
Mhm.
See, I didn't have anything like that happen to me, unless that was one of those things. I might be wrong. I might have just been playing it incorrectly, but the second time though, I did get through.
Did you guys? Okay, so did you guys finally both make it through?
Yeah, do we want to continue that route?
Let's do it, man. We're
Okay.
Might as
here.
well.
Oh, well, I mean, we might, yeah, I was going to say we might as well because there's not much left to it. So that's what I ended up doing was just
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like you can talk about the ending of it, but like you said, there's not much to it. But like to me, this is like the biggest mind blow of the entire game.
Well, I meant like this path, this branching path.
Yeah,
We're about at
sure.
the end of it. So what happens at this point is I went ahead and just redid the whole thing.
Before you go any further, as soon as you enter the boiler room, it does give you an objective to find the second caller. I think
Yes.
that's important.
Yes, and it's referring to the cell phone that calls you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And which is the male voice. So whenever you're smart and you close your eyes fast enough, you can get past the beast that we have discussed is named the Empress.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings you to a room with a spiral column staircase, and you walk up that, and you are up in a random room with a wheel with a piston on it, moving up and down, and it begins talking to you. And it turns out that this is actually William, the main character, talking to you through the cell phone and in this room, and he asks to be returned to his body. And basically, your body, who, as you know with our conversation with the janitor, is actually Lila, tells him that even with her help, he's not going to get his body back. And then he tells you to take this wheel with you, and it's the wheel that's moving the piston up and down, and you take it with you. And then it just brings you to the main menu, and you can reload from your autosave. It will put you in the boiler room with that cogwheel now, and you can continue out and continue going upstairs to find Martha's keys and such. So.
You can also start a new game, and you will also start with the wheel.
It stays with you no matter what you do there. So.
Pro tip there. Yeah, that blew my mind whenever because I've been playing for a couple hours at this point. This is this is my 4th playthrough, and whenever Will walks up to this machine, it's like, "Hello, William." And I'm like,
yeah.
And the machine also talks, which is just surprising, but it's like, "Hello, Lila." I'm like, and then immediately just reframed everything that I had been doing. I was no longer like I still didn't understand it, but I knew I wasn't just an innocent, scared teenage boy. I knew that something more sinister was going on.
But
yeah.
Ryder, did you want to tell us about your first playthrough since we covered mine?
Yeah. I don't know if I had what could be considered the intended way for it to be played, but the first time, but I feel like mine is probably the most natural path
Okay.
because I followed the objectives through to the ending.
Mr. Linear.
Just because, well, you know, my first playthrough, I didn't
Linear.
understand that. I guess I didn't. I knew you could go other places, you know, do other things, but I got stuck in the boiler room, kind of looping around.
Sure.
And you know, I'd
Oh,
already gone to the
okay.
school, so there's only like one other path in the school,
That's cool.
which is so I, you know, woke up. You have your phone calls, you know, take the trash out, and I think it's important because as I go down to take the trash out, I say hello to our concierge, Miss Dorothy something. I can't remember her last name, which is funny because she's almost exclusively referred to as her
Hutchins.
last name, Miss Hutchins. Yeah. Go to take the trash out, and there's a whole bunch of crows sitting around the garbage can, and you know, I don't think anything of it other than just, you know, the crows sitting around trash cans. It's a pretty normal occurrence in our world.
One
You
thing,
know, but you click on them. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say you were about to say it, I think, but one thing it says after you click on them is, "I know why you're here." And
Yes.
yeah. Sorry if you were about to say that.
Immediate red flag.
Yeah, so I was going to say it's like there's like three crows, and the most natural order I think it makes sense for you to click on them is like I feel like it's intentional, but it's, you know, like the right, left, and then the top.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if that flipped right on the screen on the camera, but we're just going to act like it did. So the first two crows that are on the ground are both a dirty crow. I'm not going to scare them away, or something to that effect. And then
Mhm.
the third crow, the one that's sitting on top, the last one that I clicked on, and I tried this in other playthroughs, and he always says on this one that's on top. So again, I think it's intentional. You click on him from last. He says, "I know why you're here," like you said.
Mhm.
And at the time, I was just like, weird kid. And
Yeah.
as I'm playing it, yeah, I'm seeing all these missing pictures from Tanya. Go to the school, and people are like, "Ah, we know what you did with Tanya, and you and her, you know, y'all slept together." And I'm like, "What? Huh?" And I guess I'm kind of innocent the way I'm playing through this. I'm just assuming the best, and I'm thinking that, you know,
Like in Will.
Misunderstood.
yeah, that like Will, because, you know, I'm reading into it the way that I'm trying to trust the narrator, trust the protagonist here.
Sure.
Maybe not protagonist, but the main character here, that what he's saying is true. And so I'm thinking, you know, maybe Will is autistic, you know, and like people are taking like these like odd reactions or inability to react as there's something worse wrong with Will. I'm trying to be empathetic, and you know, the playthrough kind of gets started, and again, I don't really think too much about it initially, and then go to talk to this person named Ellie, who supposedly knows you from a party. I smile, I'm like, yeah, I remember you, because I'm trying to play this out like I'm Will. Like, yeah, I think Will wants to be friendly. He wants to be nice. He wants to be well intentioned. So yeah, I'm gonna smile at her, and I end up getting this information about which classroom that Martha's supposed to be in at this time of day. Go and take her extra set of keys out of her backpack. Go to the the teacher's computer, and look in an Excel spreadsheet that has other students' addresses listed, and memorize it. And I'm like, you know, I'm
Good guy, Will.
still trying to like not necessarily advocate for him, but just be like, okay, I'm just going to see how this plays out. Go up to the
Probably got a
roof,
reason.
Yeah.
and Martha's sitting up there, and I like smile. I'm like, hey, Martha.
I smiled too,
says,
yeah.
Martha is frightened, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
And as far as I'm aware, I think I tried everything with this. I don't think there's any
Yeah.
way for you to interact with Martha that doesn't
Frighten
have her
her.
say Martha is frightened or looks frightened. So, but anyways, you go through this conversation with her, and it's very clearly not pleasant. He immediately starts interrogating her about, has she talked to the cops? What did she say to the cops? And again, I'm like, these are kind of understandable things. I kind of get it. Obviously, if he thinks he's being,
So
someone's trying to throw him under the bus for potentially hurting someone or making someone disappear. Yeah, it makes sense that he'd be upset. Did you say you're going to say something, John?
I have one very important thing that happens in this conversation. She asks you if you've talked to the principal, and his face is all smiley. He says, no. And then it immediately goes to a frown and goes, but you did. And that part, I was watching the face that shows on the right side of the screen when he said that, and I was just like, wow, that was scary.
Yeah.
There's a couple of moments where Will reacts independently, and the faces are intentionally terrifying. And you're like, oh, that's unsettling.
Yeah.
But as you're having this conversation, again, like you're just pretty much blind going into this because you're not. I don't even think it's fair to say that you're thrown into the middle of the story. You're thrown into the end of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's like if you sat down to watch an hour and 45-minute horror movie and someone sat you down in the last 15 minutes and you're just like expected to just pick up the pieces and figure out what's going on,
I did that with Bone Tomahawk once.
That's because you fell asleep. It was a good movie.
No, my parents were visiting, okay? But anyway, one thing I wanted to say before you jump into what happens next, you end up telling her that she needs to keep her mouth shut, but you don't know why you said that. So
yeah, at this point, you're just like, okay.
Like, you know what? Will is right. I don't know what's going on.
I'm still Team Will right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I'm Team Will, but at this point, I'm just like, I'm not quite skeptical, but I am curious. Like, all right, what's going on here? Because I don't know anything.
If I ignore all these red flags, and he seems like a fine young man.
Exactly, he's perfect.
it's like one of those AITAs on Reddit, and they're like, "Well, I need more information. I may have shot the dog, but I need more information."
Yeah, what? The dog had rabies.
Yeah,
Will would say the dog deserved it. So the like tail end of this conversation, another character walks up. You end up realizing it's Mike Graves. You don't really have a whole bunch of information other than if you've had some of the conversations that can take place earlier in the school that Mike is looking for you. He's upset with you. Mike immediately starts on the offensive, just immediately coming at you. I think I remained neutral through this, tried to react to him appropriately, and pretty much it's regardless of what you do, he's pretty much going to continue escalating this conversation. There is a way to break out of it, and I did it, but it took me 20 tries. It is extremely difficult.
I got 2 different options out of that, actually.
Really? So that's something I guess we'll talk about.
Go into those later. We can go into those later. We're in your first
I did not de-escalate at all. I thought we were good, and then I made one wrong facial reaction at the very end, and he beat my teeth in and threw me off a roof.
So that is an option for sure.
That is one way you can go about things.
My first time did not go quite that far because I was trying to remain either neutral or pleasant toward him, or actually genuinely confused. I would react surprised to stuff he was saying.
Yeah.
When he said I know you slept together, I'm like, hey, I didn't know that, so I react
right.
What? And of course he's like, what? You tell me that's not true? Anyways, this conversation ends up continuing to escalate until he ends up beating you to a pulp, and it's hard to tell because the graphics, at least it was for me, I was like, am I hitting him? And then man, this person's getting their shins stomped in. This really sucks. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, oh no, that was me. Okay, I got beat up. And
do you want me to say the third one? Because I can't think of another time it would come up because it doesn't really matter for the story. Sure. The third option is if you play your cards right and look pathetic, he will lower his guard and you actually can beat him up. Yeah.
There we go.
But you just you hit him in his nuts and then
you have to pretend to be pathetic though. So
do you push him off the roof or do you just
no you just beat him up? So it plays a scene where he bends over or is gonna do something, and you counter him and just swing. So,
Does that make an ending, or do you
no,
just
it
keep
has
playing?
no effect on the story whatsoever because
At least that I'm aware of.
no, well, I literally went through it after I did that, and it didn't change the outcomes at all.
Okay.
Well, I got my teeth knocked out and thrown off a roof,
Yeah,
and when that happens,
something
it
else.
fades. It fades to white, and you wake up in a hospital gown, and there's a doctor named Dr. Hades.
Yeah.
I didn't have that happen.
You didn't
Oh,
have
you
that
didn't
happen?
have this? Okay, I forgot
You
So
about
I
got-
got thrown
doctors
off the
then.
roof, woke up
So
in a
as
hospital.
you're like coming to consciousness, you're overhearing a doctor and a nurse
Yeah.
talk about your condition, and it doesn't. It just says like in
He
the
needs
window,
rest.
like
Yeah.
Dr. Hades.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, they're talking, and I'm like, oh, so I'm dead. Got it. I'm dead. And as you get up and you leave, and as you leave the hospital room, you have like scenes. I don't want to say they're flashbacks because I don't know that they like physically happened, but like
Yeah, they're not flashbacks.
scenes of Will and
Go
Lila,
ahead.
who
Yep.
looks like Tanya, having conversations.
So did
The
you?
first one
Yeah,
I kind
oh,
of summarized.
you got it.
I'll go
Perfect.
for it, man.
I was
Huh?
gonna say, do you actually have them wrote down because these were very detailed and I thought they were very interesting.
You can look up the script if you want to. I just wrote down like the big takeaways. So like
That's good
the
enough.
first scene, Lila reveals that she only exists if she is thought about,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of blew my mind. Then you go to the next floor, and Lila is attempting to convince Will that he doesn't actually exist. And he's like, "But I have a personality." And it's like, where's your personality? He's like, "Well, it's in my mind. I know it's real." He's like, "What's an imaginary friend?" And he's like, "Oh, something in my mind. Are imaginary friends real?" It's like very existential. And then on the last four, Lila talks about the prince, and I just wrote that down and wrote a bunch of question marks because I didn't really get it.
So, so what she goes into is the fact that the prince is everyone and everything, I believe, and how he sees himself as whenever he looks through the shards of someone's life, he can picture himself as them, but as soon as he jumps to another shard, he becomes that next person. So it's more like a finite being, as I was seeing it anyway. But
So
I meant an infinite being. My bad.
So the prince is an entity separate from Lila, or is it another facet of Lila? Separate entity?
Yeah,
Separate,
prince is separate.
yeah.
Yeah. Did you have something? Yeah.
As far as hierarchy, I think that the prince is above
He's like
Lila.
the top.
Yeah, that's the way I interpret it as well.
Gotcha.
I think that she, in one of the endings, refers to the prince as like her father, essentially.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it quite works the same way. The like demonology and things of like the occult that like this, the father versus mother. I don't necessarily believe it's like full genetics as much as it's like he created
Euphemisms or
her.
something.
Yeah.
After these sequences or these scenes, you go down one more set of stairs, and there's a set of like curtains kind of flapping. And then there's a narrator who
Yeah,
I
it
might
names
be
them.
I might be mistaken, but I don't know that they're anywhere else in the game. But their name is like Jachin or Joshin.
Yeah, that's the only time I seen it, and I was so confused.
And he basically says like, "And Will walked into the light," like, and then. And I was like, so I wrote down that name, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's going to be so important later. Never happens again in the game. Like, Let me look up that name. Does that name mean something?
Is it philosopher or something like that? Because there's a lot of references to philosophy in this.
According to the Bible, Boaz and Joshin were two copper, brass, or bronze pillars which stood on the porch of Solomon's temple. Could be that. It was the right pillar, named after a minor biblical figure named Joshin.
Okay.
Maybe.
I wonder if Boaz might also be in there. Maybe there's some, deeper significance if you know that religion a little bit better. With the temple and whatnot. But yeah, that was really. There's like narrator, and I was like,
and it only pops up his name once too. After you click the button, the name goes away, and you're like, wait, what? So
I'm assuming
strange.
there's significance, that
Yeah.
pretty much everything in here has some sort of significance to the larger.
So you never ended
story.
up in this area, Ryder?
No, I did. I
Oh,
did.
okay.
Yeah, I just I didn't remember the Dr. Hades thing. I thought there's
Oh,
an
okay.
actual physical character there, but yeah, no.
Okay.
Um,
So,
so
Go for it,
going
Ryan.
back to my ending, so I did not get kicked off the roof. I did not win in that fight. Um, I did get both of those at different times. I'm assuming those are just the 3 different options.
can I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Martha says something important that I wanted to mention. She mentions that the police are outside and want to talk to her. And then you ask her what the name of the police officer was, and she says something
Mhm.
Asian maybe, and Detective YU. And
Mhm.
that was just one thing I wanted to mention because that will
Important
be
later.
important later. Yeah. But
Mhm.
go ahead.
So, I did that conversation so many times. It's like
Right. Yeah.
white
Yeah.
noise, you know? So I end up waking up, who knows how much longer after Mike beats you to a pulp. And the next objective is go to Martha's apartment. So went to Martha's apartment, and
Still don't know why we're going.
yeah, I'm just like, yeah, I'm
Could
just
be
here
any
for the
reason.
ride. He says to do it, so, or I guess Lila says to do it, so I got to do it. So you end up waiting because you can't get into the apartment. It's code locked. Wait on the bench. Someone comes, opens the door, doesn't close it behind them. I walk in. You're immediately stopped by an older resident of the community who wants to make sure that you're not here to sell drugs. Say, no, I'm here for some, unknown reason, just really trusting that it's nothing, evil.
Yeah.
Well, I think I actually failed this the first time because I was like,
I
I
did too.
smiled. I was like, yeah, I live here.
Yeah, I did
And
that
he was
too.
like, okay, then what's your name? I was like,
Yeah,
he's like, let me just call the
can't think of a
concierge.
single name. Yeah.
And I guess like it's interesting because it kicks you out. And I didn't follow this to see if there's anything else afterward, but which I actually now I'm thinking about, I might try it. But it kicks you out of the building and tells you to check your autosave,
Oh,
which
okay.
is like, of course I
Yeah.
would just reloaded the game, but now I'm thinking about like, yeah, maybe I should go back and
Well,
see what happens if I don't.
I can save you the trouble. There are 2 light bulbs that show up after you're sent back out of the building. One of them just tells you that you can't open the door, and the second one, no matter where I clicked on the screen, it would not let me click on it, and it would not let you leave either. So you literally had no choice. That's
Then why not just like
right.
Just
Reload.
reload it
automatically.
automatically?
But this is just
Okay.
like the train station where you're forced to redo it until you get it right.
You have to finish this path. Okay,
Right.
so
I hadn't reached a situation where I hit a fail state. Like I didn't get killed by Stretnov or the Empress or anything like that. So to me, that was like really clever. That's like,
Yeah.
hey, check your autosave.
It-
And I didn't even try to leave. I assumed you would just have to leave and go do something else. But
We glanced over the third one. So the third one was whenever you talk to that student to figure out where Martha's classroom is. If you fail your conversations with her and do something weird, she'll tell you that she's not comfortable talking to you anymore, and then the game tells you you need to reload or you won't be able to do anything. And
Yeah.
it won't let you leave that classroom either. So those are the
Okay.
3 hard locks I
Dead
found
ends.
in the game. Yeah, dead ends that you have to redo.
yeah, they really should just like be like, hey, you messed up and load for you.
Yeah,
But I guess it gives you the option to load to a later state or to just go to the home menu if
or
you don't.
different ones. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah,
go
but
ahead.
the thing is, it forces you into Strepnov, which is what's why I force you there and reset the others. But
Mhm.
anyway, so I failed the first, I guess, skill check. I don't even know if that's really the right word because there's
Sure.
I guess the only skill is my skill as a click and dragger. So failed the first one. He of course kicks you out of the building. You have to reload. Reload. I went back in and I tried to do an angry one. The dialogue options never change on like during the timed events, but the way that the ensuing conversation plays out changes. So of course, I did angry face, and even though I'm saying yes, it's what's it to you, and then of course he continues will that is continues down this like more belligerent path, like because the old man's like, oh, then if you live here, you shouldn't be a problem if I just go ahead and call someone. And then Will threatens the old man, and I think John said he pulls a knife on him. Is that correct?
Yep.
Said or he threatens to pull a knife on him rather. So that's how I end up getting through. The old man runs away. It's like, I'm going to call the cops. And I think you get some little note saying something to the effect of like, yeah, that might be an issue, but hopefully you'll be out of here before the cops arrive.
Yeah.
So up until this point, there's the different color palettes that you can choose. And I've been playing with like a cool blue one, not the normal black and white. It's like offensive to my eyes, but I was playing with like a cool blue one that just mellows it out a little bit. And this is the first and only time I can think that this happens. But as it forces a red and black palette, and it just immediately becomes like oppressive is how it feels as you're like walking down this hallway in Martha's apartment. I think it's condo is what the location's called. It's just a straight path. There's no alternate paths you can go down. You go straight to Martha's room. Let yourself in with her extra keys and hide in her closet. From her closet, you can look and see a couple of different things. She has an unmade bed, and you call her, I think, a naughty girl, or is it dirty girl? I can't remember.
It's very weird.
But it's
strange to say.
It's specific, though, because it actually is something that's said in another ending that is quoted. So it ends up wrapping all around. But you look, and there's a David Lynch movie poster in there. It's just like it's the only cool thing in here. Look at like clean underwear hanging on like a drying line, and like makes comment again about her being like dirty or like a naughty girl, no shame, something like that. And the last thing you do is look out the window, I believe, and there's something to the effect of she'll be here. You just have to wait. Eventually, Martha does show up.
Closet, by the way.
Yes, my doors aren't closed, just waiting in the closet. And this is the point where I was like, I don't know, it's getting kind of harder for me to justify.
Might not be a good guy. I don't know what's going on.
I was like, wait, what am I doing?
But jury's still out. He hasn't done anything yet, other than breaking and entering. But honestly, he wasn't even breaking. He did enter. He had the key, though.
He did threaten someone. He did threaten harm on someone.
Dude, that old man should have just minded his own business.
No.
The door was left open. So Martha ends up showing up, and Will just automatically steps out of the closet. She starts freaking out and is like, Will? And this allows you to react to her, to say like, hello, Martha, something to that effect. And I feel like the first time I did it, she didn't scream, but anytime I replayed it, she did scream. So maybe y'all can correct me. Is there a facial expression you can choose where she doesn't scream?
Yes, that would be the smile.
Okay, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She will not.
See, I feel like
it's equally terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's subsequent playthroughs. I don't think I ever did the smile again because it just seems like the obvious thing that if I do a smile, I'm like hiding in someone's closet and I step out and like, hello, Martha. Like it's not going to result in anything other than a freak out. She screams for help. You punch her. Actually, no, the first time I smiled, so she didn't scream.
Mm-hmm.
But it immediately pretty much, she's like freaking out though. And she's like, what are you doing here, Will? And your figure kind of starts to like change and like glitches and contorts and then she's like Tanya, and then the first moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, happens because Will responds, says something to the effect of,
The name is Lila.
I know who Lila is now. And I'd already talked to the janitor, but again, I try not to think too much about it when he calls you Lila. Yeah, but then like the voice change and everything, I'm like, okay, this is not okay. And yeah, Will strangles Martha, and at this point, I'm like, all right, she snitched. To be fair, so maybe it's just like a knee-jerk reaction. Maybe she lied about him, and he's just a little over the top. Yeah, it's like he's not a bad guy. He's just misunderstood. And then pretty much you immediately it cuts. You're out in the hallway. The red palette's gone. Now it's just your normal color palette, and you're like, all right, back to normal. Can't go back into the apartment.
Do.
Yeah, I'm like, Will's such a good guy. I love this dude. But
Tying
as
up all
you
the loose
leave,
ends, you know?
it pretty much immediately plays out. It doesn't allow you to choose where you're
Nope.
going to go. It sends you straight back to your apartment. You see cops are outside, specifically like 2 cops near the dumpster, and you can click on them and it says they're looking at the dumpster, inspecting it. And another cop who's like, are you William Clark? I think that's his last name.
Yeah, it is,
And
yeah.
if from there, it takes you straight to the police station
Can we
where
pause there?
interrogation begins. Yes.
So in my mind, with all the playthroughs I did, the interrogations are like the actual endings, because after the interrogation was the only time I was able to get credits, and there's still multiple endings to be had.
Mhm.
But before we continue, do you mind if we circle back and wrap up like the other paths you can take before we get to the? Okay.
Yeah, that part's going to take a
Um.
while.
Yeah. So I want to get back to you wake after you get thrown off the roof. You wake up in the hospital. You walk through the curtains.
Hmm.
When you walk through the curtains, it enters a really interesting like first person perspective, and you're like walking around with like WASD, and you're looking in first person with the mouse, and so it just completely changes
It's the right half of your screen this time instead of the left.
yeah, it completely changes like the mechanics of the game. um and I'm trying to find it in my notes, but you find a reel, like a projector with a reel in it that's displaying Tanya's face, and then if you have the reel that you got from the boiler room, you can swap it and it displays Will's face.
Hmm.
And then the player character, Will, Lila, whoever it is, says, looks like Lila's gone.
Yep.
Or I guess Lila's gone, or something
Mhm.
like that. Did y'all both get that?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you had the wheel, you made that happen?
And important to note here, I'm glad I did this. I would have been very angry. Um, you can make a save before you go into the curtain room. Once you get past the curtain room and start doing that, you can't make
Mhm.
any more saves. So,
Yes.
but yeah, if you didn't bring the wheel, you would just take. You can choose to take off the wheel, or you could just leave it.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, go ahead.
And then I was like, well, how do I get out of this? Because
Mm-hmm.
as I started wandering around, I found like a crashed car, and like, ooh, that's important. And it's like pallet unlocked. I'm like, okay, not what I needed.
I have a picture of that car's make and model on my phone in case I needed
Yeah,
it for later.
I wrote it down in my notes like this will be important. I don't think it was.
I didn't find any use for it.
But eventually you find I'm trying to find it on my sheets. Whatever. You find like these you find a boat,
Mm-hmm.
and you go in the boat, and there's these 2 like transmission towers that are palpitating each other with lightning,
Yep.
and then you're like, sure, and you just row casually into the lightning and die, and then boot you back to the title screen.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, I found it. This is like the end of the game. Like Will's back, and now we're gonna fix some stuff. Nope.
Hmm.
You just I don't really know what that was supposed to mean or accomplish.
Oh, okay, okay. So you still don't know what that meant?
Well, I know that
Oh, you know the future. You know what? Okay.
I know
Gotcha.
like some of the context, but I just thought there was going to be more meat to that section. But
Yeah.
it just kind of ended.
So in this area that you're in, this is actually where I found the glitch in the game. One of them. There is a break in the rocks if you explore, similar to where the wrecked car is. But there's a break in the rocks that you can walk under that brings you to broken. What did you call them? The electrical things.
Like the electrical towers.
Yeah, the big electrical towers that are broken, and you can walk in between them. So I was like, well, let me walk around back here, and I walked forward a bit, and it just drops you off the map. So, but I just got back and I did the river 3 different times, replacing the reel, leaving the reel alone, and then not putting another reel.
There's one other sequence that I discovered that has like the first person exploration kind of angle to it, and that's if you go to the apartments. Now, when you go to the apartments, like the burned down apartments that you get the address from who is it, from the Empress?
Yeah.
After you escape from Strupnev, um, you go to the burned down apartments, and the idea is that they burned down because of some cult activity that was happening with like Father Lawrence's cult, which Will has been alluded to be a part of. And let's see. When you get there, the weird thing to me was, and this is my second playthrough, so this is the second thing I did after I like escaped Strupnev, is you get to the apartments and Will has a dialogue box that says that he is an investigator for the fire. And I was like, huh? And I was like, is this like a persona that he's putting on? He's going to try to use that to get into the building. But then you talk to the cop and you're just like, no, I live here. And the cop just gets called away. So and so then I was like, does he have multiple personality disorder where he like in this new location, he thinks that's his role? But I never really found anything that gave any credence to why he would have said that. Did you guys?
I think it's that there's multiple timelines going on, and depending on where you go at the beginning of the game will split you off into an earlier timeline.
Yeah, this was an earlier timeline. Yeah.
You guys are so smart. So it's not that he's an investigator, he's just literally is investigating.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So is
Because
this
he's one of only
He's a
two
part of
members
it,
who
yeah.
Oh my
survived.
gosh, you
So
guys are so smart. So this is before he becomes Lila.
Yes. So
correct.
him and what was the guy you meet at the train station? You and him are the only
Strupnev.
two left. Yeah.
Strupnev.
Yeah.
All right, that makes you guys are so smart. This is why I want to talk about this with other people.
Fair.
So you go into the apartments, you find this burned down kind of room where the fire started, and you find like a desk that's full of stuff. And the first thing that I clicked on was there's like a book,
A how-to
and
guide.
it's some kind of like spell book, ritual book, and it just tells you step by step. Position the yantra as its center at eye level. Look at the center. Allow your attention to expand. Do not move your eyes. Gradually expand your attention across the sacred figure. As you reach the outer contour, you will already be unreadable. And I put a question mark beside that. And basically it's just very fancy instructions for there's like a weird symbol on the wall. If you sit in the chair and just stare at the wall, then it'll gradually, like without moving, the scene will change around you and you'll enter another one of those first person exploration sections, which leads to like I think the most interesting part of the game for me from a mechanical perspective, where you meet uh this figure that's like, hey, to solve the deep mysteries of this world, go here. And it's like a Steam link, and
Yeah.
it's like I've copied it to your clipboard. It's like, are you
So
allowed to do that? Okay.
so
So
what he explains is that whenever you get there, he tells you that another being like me willingly came here, and he tells you that that if you need assistance, one of his servants will help you, and that's
Damon.
yeah.
Damon.
So you go to Steam, you through the link, and it's like free DLC for the game. It's called
But it can't be
Damon.
accessed
Yeah.
unless you have the.
Oh, really? You can't just look it up?
No, I don't think you could find it. I tried
God,
looking
man.
under the actual like Steam page for this game.
Yeah.
I think you pretty much need to know its existence.
You need the link.
I think you can go into the search bar and find it if you know what it is, but you can't just find it from like the store page as far as I'm aware. So it
That's-
forces you to play the game to learn that you can do this.
Which is when I realized like, oh, this is gonna have like some meta narrative elements and like multimedia like functionality, and that's I played Alan Wake 2, and like I said earlier, and that has a lot of that in it, where it's layering live action film with video games, with literature, and in just interesting ways. So I'm all about doing weird stuff with different mediums in one like product. And
Did
so
this like start with
yeah.
Hideo Kojima with Metal Gear Solid? Like, is that like the earliest example of something like that?
I knew you were gonna bring this up.
Is there stuff like that? I've only played the first game. I don't remember anything from the first
Yeah,
game. Like
yeah.
that.
The first game.
Oh, you're talking about Psycho Mantis?
Yeah.
Inscription does this as well.
Oh my gosh, Inscription does that a ton.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games that have done stuff like this.
Interesting to think about.
for the sake of not talking about a billion other games, you download Daemon, Daemon, and it's just a little buddy that appears in your window, or like in a separate window, and you like can on the title screen of Who's Lila, you can like summon him to like sync up with your game, or you summon him to the desktop, and then can sync him up with your game by opening him, and he just tells you things that you wouldn't have known, and also makes things appear because after I reset, I started back in Will's apartment, and the Damon was like, "Check out the desk" or whatever, and you go look over by your diary, and there's a key there, and it's the key to Tanya's locker, and I assume that's how you unlock the key to Tanya's locker.
Yeah, it is. And one thing of note that that guy tells you when you're in that magical world, he tells you that that demon can give you the phone number to talk to Father Lawrence when you go to the other burned room. And that's yeah.
So let's make our way back to the burn room before we continue with the Tanya's locker key or anything like that.
Before we go to the narrative side of it, I just want to say that I was really. This was probably ending 3 or 4 for me at that point, and
I think this is 3.
let me see.
No, this is like 3 or 4 for me as well. So.
Something like that. But that was the point where the game to me went from like I was enjoying it. This is interesting. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. It's a reverse detective story, as the I think creator of the game has described it. It's having a lot of fun with all these concepts. But this was the point when you can unlock Daemon, where it just took it to like a whole other level for me, and I was
in a good way, right?
Yes, in a good way. I was so like terrified of like Daemon initially because I was like, oh my god, what is going on? I ended up kind of enjoying his company. He talked to me. I'm like, hey buddy, it's been a little while. You've been quiet over there. But it just, for some reason, I guess because it like opens up the rest of the game. It starts with Daemon. He's just one little thing who's sitting there watching you play and talking to you. And then there's so many other things that come later as a result of, I guess, this. And maybe not everyone finds it in the same order. But Daemon was the first thing to really expand this game from just being something else entirely.
Yeah, it was a really cool thing. It's also really creepy looking, just sitting there, like staring at you the whole time you play. I will say he didn't have as much to say as I thought he would.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah.
But I also did like all the school stuff after and not before I found him. So I don't know if that was, I played a little more out of order than they expected, but I don't know.
No, there really weren't, because I went back and did everything after I got him, and it really didn't add very many things.
His little icon will pop up in the corner if there is something, and it'll do that in any room. So there's like maybe 4 or 5 things total that he does.
He does. If you click on like the painting that's in Will's apartment, he's like, the incident happened on this date, and I'm like, okay, what do I do with this information? I didn't know.
It's ridiculous.
Ryder, did you look it up?
Yeah, I looked it up because
I
tried using that for the password on his diary.
Yeah,
so
it didn't work.
Let's do that one at the very end, because there's a reason.
There's
why.
No way.
There's no.
I don't know how someone figured that out.
Right? Yeah, I was so upset I couldn't find out all of them. That's why I spent 8 hours playing this game. This game does not take 8 hours to play.
No.
And I never could find it, and so ultimately I did have to look them up. But I would like to save that one for the end because it's very very important.
Well, let's go back to the burned room then. You next to the spell book, there's also a computer, and if you go to the computer, there's like you have to put in a code.
Yep, and you don't know the code.
And I just started pushing buttons, and I got in. So I
serious?
don't know.
All right, I got
is that
you like completely skipped the gameplay mechanic with Daemon by doing that?
I was like I didn't.
You
I got into this
very
before I got to Daemon.
Wow!
Like,
how many times did you? There's like literally 1,000 different codes you could have used, and you somehow got it.
It was. Well, I don't know what the password was, but I just went to. Was that what it was?
It's random. No, it's random for everybody. Because I looked it up afterward.
I think mine was like 1, 3, 2 or something like that. 'Cause I just went to my number pad and
Like
I
it
just
wasn't
set my
mine.
fingers on my keys and I started doing like, boop. It just started going up and down, and it just was like, "Yep, got it."
Kurt,
I was,
hacker
I
professional.
legitimately was like, "Huh." But I'm gonna roll with this. This is my gameplay experience.
I wanted to do that
So,
with the journal, but there were 10,000 different options, so I did
that was
not
way
do
more
that.
tedious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
I
couldn't
got to
type it.
52. I zeroed everything out and then went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up. And I
Oh,
got
no.
to 50 and I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah,
I can't.
I almost did it, and I was like, nah, I'm not doing that.
It would actually be faster to
Yeah.
play the game to 100% completion than to click through
Better do
everything.
that.
So, Kurt, do you want me to tell them how you get the code actually?
Yeah, how do you get the code actually?
So, you go to the telephone, and Damon gives you the code, which is randomized because he gave me a different code when I redid this. And
Okay.
who you call is Father Lawrence, and you ask him where he is, and he said he. Does anyone remember specifically, or Ryder? Do you remember what he specifically says?
I don't. I assumed he's in some type of like other plane of
Limbo,
existence or something
right.
like that. Yeah.
And go
You
ahead.
call him and he recognizes you. He calls you William, but then
Yeah.
he says, "We were like Lawrence, what's going on?" And he says, "Lawrence was the name of the last vessel."
Right. Yeah. And so you can assume that maybe Lila took over Lawrence at some point.
I think that this is Lila speaking to you as Lawrence. Lawrence is gone, but Lila has not inhabited Will's body at this point.
Oh,
But
that's
then
true.
But then the conversation also says that Lila must be stopped, and that they thought the Empress would be able to stop her.
Right.
Oh yeah,
So
actually
Lila's
maybe.
not
Yeah.
saying this. I think
That's true. Yeah.
I think just like there's like the will machine that we find in the boiler room, that
Mhm.
Lawrence is.
Oh, that's
This is
true. Yeah.
what's left of Lawrence is his
Limbo.
voice.
Yeah. Okay. So he does detail to you that you need to look in his notes on how to stop Lila, and so he gives you the computer password. So that's
Yeah, I've
ultimately
that
where the
written down.
conversation went.
It's just
Okay.
the day after I figured it out on my own.
Okay. Okay, I got you. So, would you mind if I covered what happens next? Because I need to vent.
You talking about on the computer?
Yeah, what happens next? Yeah, with the computer.
Yeah, go for it.
So
I got all the links pulled up.
I just want to stress to everyone that's watching this how annoying it was to record what was going on with this. Because you're going to be watching it right over here, and I just want you to know that it is a lot more difficult than you think to get all of this stuff added in so you can see it and get it recorded. So what happens first is you unlock the computer, and there are two files in it. One is password protected. You can't open it. The second one is, I believe it's just a link, right? It's a link to a website.
Mhm.
But you don't go to it on the computer in the game. You go to it on your actual computer. And it is the most cultish website. It really fits the bill for what this organization was. And so this website is ramblings of Professor Ribkin. And he goes on to tell you about the generation of consciousness and a sort of parasitic relationship with that. And then goes on to ramble, and then it even includes Wikipedia entries for two different topics about hard problems of the consciousness, as well as qualia. Did either of you follow these and actually read any of them?
I got you, man.
Okay.
So
I did the first one, the consciousness issue. Yeah, no, and like freshman philosophy, but no, I was like, I clicked on it and I scrolled and was like, oh wow, they actually no, I'm not doing this, and just kept going.
Well, I didn't know what qualia was, so
cut me off whenever you're ready
Okay.
to like keep going on your thing, John. But I summarized like literally everything because again, this was my second playthrough when I discovered all this, so I just was like in it and ready to go. But so the professor posits that consciousness might be a parasitic entity that's separate from natural human evolution, which is a very strange thought. And then, like John said, there's the Wikipedia articles of the hard problem of consciousness, and of qualia. I didn't take any notes on hard problem consciousness. Do one of y'all want to summarize that, or I have it pulled up? I can.
So basically, it just covered how humans and other organisms have qualia, phenomenal consciousness, and subjective experiences as well. So all of those things together.
And then they define qualia as 4 traits. It's ineffable, meaning it can't be communicated or like comprehended by means other than direct experience. It's intrinsic. They are non-relational. They do not change depending on the experience's relation to other things. They're private. There are interpersonal comparisons or sorry, rather, any attempt at interpersonal comparisons of qualia is impossible. And then they are directly and immediately like able to be apprehended by consciousness. So to experience a quality is to know one experiences a quality. So basically, the example they use in the Wikipedia article is like the color red. Like, you know it's red, you see that it's red. Other people can agree that they also know that it's red, but you cannot know for sure that you are seeing the same color. You just are agreeing that it's qualified as red, and there's no way to compare the 2 reds that you see.
And so I want us all to stop and think about, if you're a confused audience, just know we were very confused out of left field.
I was having a great time.
I deep dive into this cult stuff and just went at it and just tried to understand what was going on. And but I just wanted to point that out. If you're confused, don't worry. That was all part of the game.
It also links a defunct Washington Post
It does.
article. And I was like, that sucks. This article was deleted. And then I realized, like, no, this is just like a fake link.
On purpose, yeah.
Yeah. But
that's what they want you to think.
That's what I was about to say. It's a conspiracy theory.
Well, so in the original website by Professor Ripken, it talks about the use of memes. Is effectively what they call them.
Works of art originally, though.
Yeah, works of art, and then later, like, eventually memes to like control and direct and evolve like public consciousness and like society. And the example they give is a guy named Chet Murray who invented the Dada dog, which is just like a crappy drawing of a dog, and that was eventually co-opted by like political extremists and was used as a symbol for to kill minorities and other heinous crimes. And
it's Pepe the Frog.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is Pepe the Frog. So it's just they just didn't want to use a real person, because I looked into it. And so the guy that made Pepe the Frog is Matt Fury. So Chet Murray versus Matt Fury.
I wonder why they picked a name so similar.
And then Pepe the Frog, and he is still alive. So don't worry, it's not like a 1-to-1 comparison. He was not killed. But Pepe the Frog meme, which is supposed to be a silly, sad frog, around the 2015 16 American political climate, was co-opted by alt-right, and just some really heinous images kind of made out of it. I looked into it on Wikipedia. It was also used by Hong Kong protesters, but all the articles are like not the same political context. Hong Kong protesters are not alt-right. But yeah, so basically just something harmless used to create a political agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ripken and his co-worker Professor Lawrence, who, Brother Lawrence, were seeking to create their own works of art that they could use to guide the public consciousness instead of just being something that happens by accident.
So anyone who's been in contact with her.
Do we think the fire was an attempt to do that?
I thought so.
Or do you think?
I think so, yeah.
But then Will was also like aware of it, so it didn't work.
Well, Lila was aware of it and kept Will away so she could inhabit Will.
He was sick, right? Is what they end up saying.
Yeah.
That's why he couldn't go.
So I have a question. I don't remember the answer. Do we know who started the fire?
Yes.
Okay.
Go on.
You want to tell us? Yeah.
It's revealed in a conversation with Detective Yu.
Yeah.
That the FBI actually started the fire.
That's right. I remember that now. Okay.
So before we get to like the police and Detective Yu, I think there's I only have one more
Path.
path that I went through, and that's after the Damon. You have Damon. You can get the key to Tanya's locker. Go to her locker, and you open her. Hold on, I have it written down.
Her
There's a
phone is in
sticky.
there.
Yeah, her phone's in there. There's also a sticky note with a Twitter profile, and it's a real Twitter profile.
And
If you like,
the annoyance of recording that too. So I took pictures.
I don't blame you.
An
But yeah,
X profile.
it talks about how there's a pin post by Ethan Kennedy, presumably her father, saying that Tanya was lost on November 29th. There's cat pictures, mentions of extremists co-opting the data dog, of Chet Murray or whatever his name was, the creator, being killed, and also that a black student at her school named Malcolm was killed by these extremists. And I found out later that Malcolm and Michael, the guy that threw me off a roof, are like brothers.
Brothers? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot. The one other thing of note that's not tied to progression is there's a screenshot of a book, The House of Life, which references the story of Lilith.
Oh, yeah.
Which, if you're not familiar with like Judeo-Christian mythology, it's like there's Adam and Eve, and then some believe that there was, before Eve, there was a Lilith, was Adam's first wife, and she turned out to be some kind of witch slash demon slash the serpent that caused the downfall of man, etc., depending on which version of the story you hear. And this didn't click with me immediately, but there's another part later where they reference. Let me look at my notes. Control F. Yeah, when you talk to Detective Yu later, Lila references her father, and I'm like, so is Lila just Lilith? And then her father is the prince, who is Satan, or like in universe, like some god? Is that how this is lining up? Did y'all think there was Lilith and Lila were a literal connection, or just a reference to similar characters?
I didn't really reference the two together.
Yeah, so I thought that initially. So it doesn't.
The names are similar.
Part of this for me is I'd already like recently fallen down a rabbit hole, like an hour-long documentary on like how the part of like the Judeo-Christian mythology of Lilith had survived well into the Middle Ages, and like particularly small, Jewish groups living in like Europe, and like how like that had kind of moved into the modern day. And something I'd never heard of before. I thought it was super interesting that like it's something it's extremely heretical, but like some groups like very much core believed it for thousands of years. So I already had like some knowledge of that, and was playing this game, and I thought that was kind of similar. I saw some like the demonology stuff, and like the Jewish side of, Christianity really, really prominent in like demonology and stuff, from just like the few like books and movies, that I've seen as far as media go. That's usually what it references, like these like older, names that are like from, the early Old Testament and stuff, versus like Baal and stuff like that, these recurring names and characters. So I thought for like a bit, like maybe there's, some connection, but I didn't really follow it. But Larkin was in here, and I was like describing the game to her, and she was like looking at the name, because I talked to her a little bit about this and told her about like the, the cults that exist in the Middle Ages around Lilith, and she goes, "Is it like Lilith? Like about Lilith?" And I was like, "I don't think so." She's like, "Kind of seems like it is." And I was like, "I don't know." And then, like, of course, further on in the game, that comes back up, and I'm like, okay, maybe, yeah, actually, that is accurate. Because like a big part of it is she's like kind of a succubus. She's like, there's like an allure to her. You want to be with her, be a part of her, type of thing. And like Lilith's plural, like in like other like parts of like mythology and folklore and stuff, were like, women who would like entice men and stuff like that. And so, yeah, actually, maybe there's like a direct correlation there. I'm assuming it has to be because he added that in. I mean, I think
Yeah.
everything in this game was intentional, but I didn't catch it initially though. Sorry, that's a bit of a tangent. I think
No,
this
you're
game is
good.
super interesting. I liked it. If you can't tell,
Yeah. Okay.
Also on the Twitter profile, for some reason, there's a picture of a cat that has like a pendant on its collar that has like her phone password, and I don't like you can't really explain that one. That's just kind of a video gamey thing.
That was so funny.
Well, like
it was cool though.
I mean, it was cool, but like the post was like, "Oh my gosh, the pattern on this collar is so cute." And it's like, so you posted this publicly and then made it your password. That's what happened. But you unlock your phone, and again, I'm just kind of rambling through this because you know we're going. But you find out I found out Tanya's dating a guy named Michael, who and was seeming to have some like suicidal thoughts. She had a conversation with Ellie about a dream Tanya had where her eyes were wrong, and then Will like deleted it immediately
Yeah, I
upon
seen
reading
that.
that. And then side tangent, every once in a while when you go to the home screen, Will's eyes are just wrong.
Yeah, they're
I think that's
closed
what's
or messed
happening.
up.
She's
Maybe they're
like
just
dreaming that
closed.
she's
Yeah,
being taken over. They might just be closed, but the image quality makes them look scary.
Yeah.
Tanya also has a conversation with Martha, like a text conversation with Martha that's deleted without reading it. Combo from a random number saying that Tanya was in danger.
I'm fairly certain that
Converse
was Father Lawrence, and he sent her the PDF.
that was like, "Hey, you're in danger."
Yeah.
I didn't know if that
And
was just spam or not. But yeah, that makes sense.
and then conversation with Will, where Tanya and Will are supposed to meet at 3 a.m. Will says not to come, and Tanya goes anyway. And I'm like, is that the point that Tanya goes missing? Or maybe that's the point
Yeah.
where Will knows something is wrong but doesn't know how to stop it or fix it, and is just trying to keep Tanya away to keep her safe.
That's a surprise for later.
That was, I think that was like the night she goes missing.
It
Yeah.
is.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, which is also interesting because her cell phone is in her locker. You have the key.
Yeah.
Mm,
I
Um,
wonder why.
there's also a shopping list, which I don't think is relevant, and an
Yeah.
address. And the address takes you to Tanya's house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't do that until much later, so I'm trying to scroll to my notes.
And we didn't talk about the other address we have. Is the
Yes, I forgot about that as well.
address?
the party.
I don't remember where we get it from, but we do get the address to the where the party happened.
We
That
get
you
it,
get that very early on
Yeah.
in the school. I'm pretty
we get
sure.
it from Ellie.
And
I think.
so that
Okay, it might be
is
that.
that is another flashback, and it takes you through the events that happened unfolded at the party. And basically, I'll just go over this very quickly because I
Do
don't
it.
think there's anything of crazy in there. This is where you first meet Tanya and her friends at this party. You find Martha upstairs. She was a bit inebriated. She was arguing with her boyfriend because he's an awful person.
Will helps her out because he's a nice guy.
He's a good guy. And
He
then
actually kind of is at this point.
he takes her to the bathroom so she can get rid of some of her problems. Yeah. And you walk downstairs and meet her friends, who are Tanya and the other girl that I can't remember her name right now.
Ellie.
Ellie. And
Who doesn't have a face for some reason. I don't know why she's not like Regina has a face, but Ellie doesn't have a face.
You only have like that one interaction with her where you react. I think that's the reason why.
And so you go upstairs with them so they can check on Martha, and you come in on their conversations. All of the friends, as well as Michael's there as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And Michael
Clearly having some issues with Tanya.
Yes, they're arguing, and then Tanya leaves to go into the hallway, and you can choose to talk to them, but they don't really say anything of note that I recall. And then you go out into the hallway, and Tanya is talking about the painting that's on the wall and expressing that it was a cafe, I believe, and she talks about how she works at a cafe, and that's when her boyfriend comes out and starts arguing with her, and then he storms off.
I was making some assumptions. Like I know that Will ends up being I mean not really Will, but his body ends up being the bad guy in all this, but like Michael was kind of toxic, and maybe in his defense, this was after his brother was murdered by white right-wing extremists, but like I'm sure it wasn't Tanya's fault that happened either way. So maybe don't be a jerk to Tanya.
Yeah. So he storms off, and
There is
go ahead.
also some stuff revealed later on, and like separate conversation trees with him on the roof that like he's just kind of not a good person.
Yeah.
He's already like making assumptions about Tanya. I'm assuming the relationship just already wasn't going well, but like
Yeah,
I don't
And
know.
you could
just
tell by
kinda
their
some messed
text
up things.
messages and her phone, it was a very toxic relationship. Just
and
from what you gather.
not to cut you off, John,
No, you're
but
fine.
or like steal your thunder, but after this, you end up going on a walk with Tanya
Mm-hmm.
because she wants
Go
some
ahead.
like fresh air. And she talks about how she thought Michael was like a bad enough person and a messed up enough person that it was someone that she actually deserved to be with. So but she's like, but he's actually been really nice most of the time. So I messed that up too. So she clearly has some like
Issues
self
herself.
deprecation issues, and like
Don't we
self
all?
worth issues.
Yeah.
And there's like other stuff that's like, revealed in that as well. Like, I mean, it's not a good habit, but like she reveals that she smokes, but that she stopped smoking specifically because Michael hates it. He makes her feel bad about it. And
Mhm.
like, while obviously like it's not a good habit, but I think the bigger point of that is that like he's obviously, kind of overpowering in their relationship,
Mhm.
um, not very empathetic to what she
He
wants or
also
what she feels she needs.
Quick tempered.
he also
Mhm.
overpowers Will when he kicks his teeth in and throws him off the roof. So that's just kind of his toxic personality trait.
This is
Yeah.
true.
um, One thing that you didn't mention in your summary, John,
Mm-hmm.
was that before you go see Martha, there's just a dude hanging out in a corner. Did you guys go talk to
The
him?
stranger. Yeah.
That is the creepiest thing in this entire game.
I missed that, but it's brought up in another path later on where someone
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Yeah, that
Well,
guy in the corner," and I was like,
it's at the end of this. So the guy in the corner is a stranger, and he has a face that looks almost
Oh my
like
god.
Will's. Like it looks like Will's if he was wearing like
mm.
a little bit of prosthetic makeup on his nose and a lot of makeup. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like if you had them standing in a room 20 feet from you, they would look like the same
I
person.
just got chills thinking about when this person comes in later, and I'll have to explain it.
But well, the most immediate time that he comes up is after you finish your walk with Tanya. You guys dance and you
Mm-hmm.
guys end up kissing because you're teenagers making poor decisions. And then whenever you kiss, it immediately cuts to like a psychedelic cutscene of people dancing. There's a super creepy person in the audience, and I don't think it's the stranger. I think it's another face, maybe. And then also like an owl just is like a
Yeah.
jump scare.
Yeah.
I don't know what an owl has to do with this game either. Um, but then it just cuts to like Will and the stranger standing face to face, and Will's just like, "What happened?" And the stranger's like, "She had her face," and then it just cuts back to title screen.
Yep.
I'm like,
That's
"What's
that's the end of
so
that path.
scary?"
Yeah.
Did you
Eh,
did you see that? Right? You said you didn't talk to the stranger, but did that cutscene
No,
happen?
yeah, no, that cutscene did happen. I'd already seen the face in another ending, so it wasn't something new to me. But that I also do think that face was the same face that's in the background as it like begins to like zoom in as people are dancing. I think that is the same
That's
face
her
that he's
or
seeing.
it.
Him or it, I don't know, whatever
Mm-hmm.
this entity is. That's the one thing I didn't really completely figure out. Of course, I mean it's something to do with the occult, but I don't think it's Lila because you know
Is it
Lila
the
comes
prince?
back later.
I don't have
Do
anything
what?
intelligent. I
Is
said, is
that
it the
the
prince?
prince?
I don't have anything intelligent to back up that claim, but it's the only other mystical character.
Maybe it could be. I don't know. But again, I couldn't tell if it's supposed to be a feminine or masculine entity when I
I
was
think on
looking at it.
purpose it was kind of neither.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
androgynous. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you might be right.
yeah. It was like I said, it's a will, but with much softer features and
Right.
like makeup. So
Right. Yeah. Which is weird because it's pixelated, but you could still tell it had makeup on, so it's very
it was
interesting.
like legitimately
Creepy.
the thing that scares me about this game the most, because this game is a horror game,
Yeah.
definitely, but none of it really scared me except for the stranger. Like sometimes, like I'll just think about its face, the stranger's face, and it like creeps me out.
Right.
I think So this is like not related to that portion of it, but I know, John, you're talking about nothing consequential happening in this, and I partially agree, but I think like the reason why this matters is because obviously exposition, it sets up like an earlier part of the story, but for me personally, it makes me feel much worse for Tanya and
Right.
for
Yeah.
Will, because these are normal people.
They're just kids.
Yeah, who Tanya especially. I mean, goodness. Let's keep going, I guess, from here, because there's so many different things we have to talk about. I think we should talk about the lovers ending. I think is like one of the more important things to talk about.
Tanya's house.
Yeah, that's where we're going next.
Yeah,
that's the last one that I got. I forgot about Matt's house. This is the actual last one that I got.
It's okay, there's
John,
not many more. So.
Did you want to say it, John, or you want me to go through?
You go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So, you get Tanya's address from her phone, and when you go to it, it just immediately cuts to a scene of Will and Tanya lying in bed, presumably post-coitus, was what I gathered from it.
and I've seen this multiple times, but just this small snippet, and it's so well done. Finally getting to see it play out, because it even cuts to a different angle, like you're seeing a different perspective of the scene play out as it's happening.
And I don't remember I didn't write down like the very beginning of like their conversations they were having. I assume like normal teenage things. And eventually Will asks Tanya, it's like, "Are you Lila?" And then Tanya says, "Who's Lila?" And I have written down in my notes air horn noises.
Like, she's at it. She's at it.
She's at it. Finally, go.
Yeah.
But
I just quit the game and deleted it from my computer at that point.
I'm done.
That's it.
Like credits just pop up. But Will's like, "I don't know who Lila is," and he starts to panic. And then it said Groundhog's Day back to the beginning with no title screen. So you're back in the apartment, but you didn't go back to the title screen and hit new game. You're just back at the beginning of the game. And upon walking into the kitchen where you would normally pick up the trash bag to take it out, there's a flashback of the stranger. This is the first time I met the stranger, who looks like Will, talking to Tanya, and then Lila is also there as like a separate ghostly entity, and she looks like Tanya. And Lila says to Will that this is what you get for trying to get rid of me. So
I interpreted Tanya's there too.
no, Tanya is. Yeah, sorry, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Tanya's there, Lila's there with Tanya's face, the stranger's there with Will's face, and then Will walks in. So presumably this is a flashback to when Tanya died.
Mm-hmm.
And Lila, I don't know why she's getting revenge on Will specifically, because if the FBI started the fire, then surely she would know that. So when did Will try to get rid of Lila?
Maybe my interpretation of this is that, so Lilith again is this like succubus, and Lila is upset because he's finding someone who looks similar. It's remarked multiple times that she looks like Lila. Tanya looks like Lila. In one of the endings, Lila points out that she's angry because people keep on getting the two confused. Said only to, Father Lawrence's cult does Lila and Tanya look similar. And I'm thinking that it was her being a wrathful lover, of all the cult members. She's punishing him by killing Tanya, who she refers to as like a little slut or something at some point.
Yeah.
So that's just
jealous that he has found a connection with someone that is not her.
Correct. I think so too.
Fairly certain I have some information from this game that's gonna confuse and astound both of you if you'd like to hear it. So, in one of the end scenes with Detective Wu, who we haven't talked about yet. Sorry, Detective Yu, who we haven't talked about yet, but we're gonna get to them. But it's pointed out with a conversation with him that, in fact, the dweller that they made is not Lila.
Is it the stranger?
That could very well be the case. However,
It's
it looks like Lila. She says to him that what they made is confused with her because it resembles her, but it's not actually Lila. They did not make Lila.
so is it?
See, I thought that she says that
Oh,
in
oh,
the
oh, 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 oh.
conversation
Hold
in
up, hold up,
relation to Tanya specifically.
hold up. The research papers, the PDFs that you get from Itch.io,
Mm-hmm.
the the first successful child of L is a crude drawing of a woman named, or a girl named T.
So I believe that ultimately, because they were trying to conjure a man-made, lack of a better term, be a dweller, they resembled something that looked like Lila when they were making it. And so that's why the two are confused together. And I believe that's why Lila is getting revenge on Will, is because he was a part of the plot to make a fake dweller.
So
And so
did
that's why she's getting revenge by taking
the
over his body.
so the thing I just got excited about and said you didn't react to at all. So is that a dumb thing to say,
Sorry, what did?
or
Sorry.
well, it says that the first successful child of L they named it T.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no,
Is that
that
Tanya?
makes sense to me. There's no other T in the game that would
Right,
fit.
and
Yeah.
it's like a girl. I mean, it doesn't look like Tanya at all, but it's a crude drawing. So it could have like evolved and somehow,
Or maybe
but
T. No.
it shapes consciousness though. It doesn't like change reality. Like it does, but it doesn't. Nothing about the way they explain it makes me think that they could just create a sentient, like a almost adult person,
Yeah, definitely
and then
not.
everybody just be like, oh yeah, that person has been around and
Yeah, it's
exists.
definitely
Or
not the case.
is it, or is it just a tulpa? I think is
I think
a
it's a
tulpa
tulpa.
is
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a
because it
tulpa.
could be in that's like a part of like man, this it goes so deep. It's a part of like Tibetan
Tibetan
Buddhism,
Buddhism.
and it's like I mean, I guess this is definitely like not necessarily
That's fair.
culturally
It's like no
insensitive, but
face.
man, I'm boiling it
Or no
down.
face.
But it's
Oh, that's
like a
scary. Close your eyes.
imaginary friend type thing that like it's like the source of like magic in a person that they can pull from magic for it. But it's like an entity that is attached to a person. So maybe it's in like the general sense is supposed to be referencing a tulpa. Maybe it is Tanya. I think that either one of those is fair. I don't know.
Seems wild.
But yeah, I figured I would drop that bombshell that she explicitly states that what they made is not her because it just resembled her. So that made me think that's why she was doing all this, was to get revenge for them making something that resembled her. And that's why she showed up in the first place.
Maybe so.
Wild.
And that's what's cool about this game. Even though it gives all these branching paths and everything, it kind of leaves a open to interpretation thing here.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I did all the endings, and I still don't have the answer. That's just my how I've seen it and how it made sense to me.
Are there any other endings? Or rather, you can finish whatever you're gonna say. I was gonna say, are there any other endings that are worth discussing before we get to like the post game with Detective U?
I just want to say, I think regardless if Tanya is or is not a construction of the cult, she's a demon, not a demon. I don't know. I do not think she is aware if she is,
Mm-hmm.
and I do think she is actually pretty innocent
Oh yeah.
to the events that are kind of unfolding around her, regardless if she again was created by the cult or not. It's not like Lila, which is largely a malevolent spirit, entity.
Yeah.
But I do have endings I would like to go over, but we do need to go into what you're gonna go into next first.
About with Detective U.
Yeah.
Well, before we get to
Do I
Detective
need to
U,
wrap
can
up
we
my
talk about
ending? Or?
the interrogations?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got two endings with the interrogations. Basically, the police officers are like, "There's a good cop, bad cop," and they're like, did you kill Tanya?" And one I got was just be neutral the entire time. And if you're neutral the entire time, then I just wrote down, they'll think you're heartless and also figure out somehow that you killed Martha. Um, and then I tried a bunch of other times and then you get credits. I tried a bunch of other ways and couldn't figure out a way to get a good, quote unquote, good ending. And so I was like, I'm done with this game. Let's find one secret ending. I looked it up. If you choose neutral for the first 9 questions, and then for the 10th one choose disgusted, then Lila's like, actually, my name's Lila. And then
Yeah. And that's
she
a
reveals that,
special achievement for the game as well.
yeah, she reveals that Lila was the name that was given to her by Lawrence's cult, so that's not her real name, which kind of discredits the Lilith argument because their names are similar, but if her name's not Lila, actually, probably not actually Lilith either, because that's just a nickname. I don't think she would phrase it that way.
Unless,
Um,
like, I mean, Lilith is a name given to her by men would be the argument. Maybe it's
Fair,
the same entity that's just they reused the newer name, you know.
fair.
I think there's like 4 other endings as well as those 2.
My hands are off the steering wheel, John.
So,
Whatever you want to
I,
talk about.
so let me finish my
Go
ending.
ahead.
My first playthrough of the game, because I got to the interrogation room and
On
I
your first
tried
playthrough?
yeah. No, so
Nice.
I this is again, I think the way the game, of course, there's a million different ways you can play this, but I do think that this is the way that makes the most sense for it to be played the first time,
Sure.
because this is me following the objectives as they popped up. But you know, Martha's assuming dead. There's no confirmation at this point. You know, police are outside of your apartment. You're taken in to the interrogation room, and I'm still kind of confused what's going on because this is my first time playing the game. I have no clue, you know, what's happened to Tanya. Really don't. And the police, you know, first guy, Officer Jenkins, like you said, is doing the good cop side. And so I'm talking to Officer Jenkins and giving my little spiel.
His last name is Hutchins.
Is it
Yeah.
Jenkins, Hutchins? Yeah, Hutchins and Fisher. Yeah, you're right.
The reason I say that is the concierge's name is Miss Hutchins. And he's where you get the name Dorothy from.
Dorothy. Okay,
He says,
so
"Oh, Dorothy," but he doesn't specify their relationship. So,
okay, that's really interesting. So mother or something like that.
a sister, wife, who knows?
That's
Kurt,
interesting.
are you okay?
Lilith done got him again. Oh, there he goes.
There he is.
Here he's back.
Well, now
With
we
no
can't
audio.
hear you. Uh-oh. I'm leaving this one in.
This is master of technological issues. Oh, there it goes.
Yeah. My camera froze, and then also it switched my mic to my webcam mic, which is non-functional. So I don't know. I'm having a lot of tech issues tonight. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
Did you hear?
So-
Did you hear about?
Yeah, I could hear everything that was happening.
All right, go ahead, Ryder.
So, Officer Hutchins is who I talked to, and I'm like playing it like as straight as I can, where I'm reacting where he's like, do you know why you're here? I'm like, no, dude, what? And, you know, he's like, your name is, you know, whatever, right? Or Will. And I'm like, yeah, man. And smiling at him. And he's like, would you like some coffee or anything? I'm like, no, thanks. Smile again. And then, you know, I immediately play it surprised when he's like, all right, so where's Tanya? Come on, you know. And play through to the end of that. It goes pretty well. I get a couple of like, you know, you seem confident, you think that went well type of thing. So I'm like, all right, I got this. And then the second cop comes in, he's like, dude, spill the beans. And I'm like, what? Spill what beans? What are beans? Trying to act like I don't know what you're talking about, because again, I still literally do not know what's going on. And again, I think I might have killed Martha in blind rage because she was a snitch and lying, and so I, you know, trying to justify some Will's actions, and then he's like, you're in big trouble. We already know everything we need to know. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And then he says, we found the female torso in the garbage can. And that was the moment where I'm like 40 minutes into the game where I'm like, all right, well, okay, Will, man, you're making it really hard for me to defend you.
Man, Will, you made some mistakes, but I'm here with you till the end, buddy. We got
Uh,
this.
I'm still like, maybe it was like, okay, I do think he killed Martha, but I'm like, there's some other stuff, some fishy stuff going on. I don't know definitively if he did or didn't hurt Tanya,
Uh,
because it seems like he had some sort of relationship from what I can infer here. And then he goes a little bit further. He's like, we have DNA evidence, and you'll be able to find bone fragments. There's your fingerprints all over. And then there's this like little aside in Will's head that says, the officer said that DNA tests are not done, and I made Will wear gloves.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
This isn't Will.
okay, yeah, there's no way out of this. Now, Will, you kind of messed up, dude. And then the interrogation goes a little bit further, and like I immediately like shocked, and I'm like, I'm still gonna play this straight because I still don't know if he actually did this, but I do surprised. And then he's talking about all this like gross stuff, so I do a disgusted face, and he's like, yeah, I know, it must have smelled horrible with all the feces, the pee, the blood, and I'm like, oh my god, all right, this is getting worse. The other cop comes back in and is like, yeah, we just got a call from Birchwood. They just found a body. And the bad cop's like, what? It can't be Martha. He's like, I don't know. We'll see. And then it's game over. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, there's credits. I exited and started a new game. And then the cycle continues from there. We can talk about the interrogation again because there's a couple of different ways this can play out.
Well, I was just thinking for the sake of time, I could just quickly say the other options.
Yeah, do
if
them.
you'd like.
Get him.
All right, the other options are you can feign innocence the whole time. And if you played your cards right, you can basically frame the guy that beat you up. His name's
Michael.
Mike.
You can blame Michael, and then you can, if you've been beat up by him before, you can show your bruises and be like, yeah, he beat me up later or earlier today. If you don't have those when you beat him up, for example, it doesn't even bring up the fact that you beat him up. You'll show your bruises anyway, and you have old bruises from something else, and you blame Michael for them. And
Would you say it happened at the party the night you first met him?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you get away scot-free there. Your other options,
I did all that and still got caught.
Huh.
There's probably some minutia in the faces you make.
There's
a bar. There's a bar on the menu that fills up, and I didn't ever know exactly how to interpret that.
Whenever I was looking on the last few, I couldn't get it. They called it a confidence bar, and so there are 2 additional endings you can get in that. You can play it so pathetic, for lack of a better term, on purpose through the whole thing, gain no confidence in that bar, and you actually spill the beans to the second officer, and you're like, yeah, I killed Tanya. Lila does. She says that to him.
Lila says that?
Well, you are Lila, so.
Right, but I don't know.
I feel like there's still like some latent part of Will there, though.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. So, so that is one of the other options. And then the final one is where it's an in-between, where you don't get away scot-free, but they don't think you did it. And they ultimately are like, you smell detergent? And the other cop's like, now that you mention it, yeah, I do. And they're like, well, you must have cleaned up your apartment and all your clothes up. And then the game ends. So it's like the middle ground where they can't prove you did it, but that's how they end the game, is they still think you did it and they're going to figure it out. So, and then they're like, oh, I bet the DNA tests are ready. Let's go get them. And then the game ends.
Gotcha.
So, I think that's the main ones for that. There is a stupid one, and I was very angry I couldn't figure this one out.
Yeah.
For one of the achievements in this list was I can't even find it in here, but basically you have to pick very specific faces for the dog. whenever in the tutorial, it's like, what face would you make whenever you see a dog dead on the street? You have to make a sad face. And then the
Okay.
other one in the tutorial is whenever you see your worst enemy's been killed or whatever, you have to make a sad face to that too. And then it brings up special dialogue options with the second officer. I think that's the one where you ultimately are like, yeah, I murdered him. You have to make those faces in the tutorial or it does not happen. It's very stupid. No one would ever figure that out on their own. So
The game is really short and it allows you to replay these things like pretty easily, but also you do this enough, I can't keep up unless you're
Sort of
writing
blend them
down.
together.
right.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
But anyway,
Just to get
that's it.
so post credits, Detective Yu shows up in the interrogation room, and he's like, "Lila, let's talk. Let's meet where you save," and then it kicks you back to the title screen. And if you go into like load one of your saves, there's a new one. So all the save files have had like a symbol of an eye closed, and this one has a symbol of an eye that's open. And so you click on that one.
I didn't find this until like 4 hours in because anytime I got to this dead end, the credits, I let the credits play for like maybe 10 seconds. They're not long.
Yeah.
But right before the credits would end, like when it's saying like
You
thank
just
you or whatever, I would like
close the game.
click back out to like main
That
menu.
doesn't count if you do that.
And so like
That's
I
so
didn't
funny.
even realize it. And I was like, man, how do I get to Detective Yu? And the only reason that this happened is because I got up, I
Went to
finished like the
bathroom or
game,
something.
and Larkin called me, and I left to go talk to her, and then I went to the bathroom, and then I came back, and like I stepped into the room, and was like
Who is this?
at a distance, and like ran over to the computer, and was like, what is going on? So yeah, that's how I ended up figuring out that Detective Yu was a thing that you could actually access.
So when you talk to Detective Yu, he's like, first of all, he comments if you have the daemon open. He's like, "Oh, you brought a friend." That's
Mhm.
and then he says, "Oh, go ahead."
The daemon is that what you're about to say? What the daemon says?
Says still one of us,
Yep, still one of us.
which implies that he was a vessel at some point, or that
He's a
he's
vessel now,
or he's like,
he knows of her, so he is a host.
Mhm.
yeah.
Whether or not he's aware of that at this point, I think he reveals later on he is aware of it.
Well, yeah, he knows because he knows that's Lila the whole time you're in there.
But I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think he's aware. He doesn't make it known immediately that he's aware that if you know about Lila
Oh.
continues to live
Yeah.
until later on. I think he ends up inferring it based on the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
He asks you to select a card, and it's a group of like tarot cards that are based off the different endings that you've gotten. You unlock one card per ending, and then you and Lila kind of talk through the meaning of each ending. I've written down stuff about it. I don't really know, John, how you wanted to go through this.
You go ahead. You do all yours, and then I just want to go over the two that I had to look up a guide to figure out because they're impossible to figure out on your own.
So just quickly, so the Empress implies that Lila is a jealous mother. The Emperor, they talk more about the Prince. This is where I got the idea that for sure maybe she's Lilith, and then the Prince is her father, could be Satan or another deity. The Wheel is that Lila takes over the bodies of her victims and puts their souls into film reels. Is that?
Well,
and that
I think so, because there's like a discarded like pile of film reels in one end.
Yeah, and they talk about that, and then Will has a film reel, and you put that in, and he's like, I don't know.
Well, she says that people's lives are what make the reels. Their experiences, events, and personal conflicts and experiences in their life are what make those reels.
So it's not that she's trapping; it's just that they're like manifestations of the lives that people are living.
Yes, and she is a manifestation of that because she only exists in people's consciousnesses. And so what happens is her being comes to light whenever the reels are made. Pieces of her are made into the reels, and that's how she becomes a being.
Makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's the hard consciousness thing because it's outside of like our physical like world and like interacts separately from like our actual like brain or anything else. Like I don't know.
The Lover's card is interesting because it seemed to imply that Will killed Tanya because he thought that Lila had taken over Tanya and that killing her would kill Lila. That's what the dialogue read to me, but that doesn't match the scene.
Right, yeah.
So I probably just misread it.
I'd have to go back and read that one because I don't recall that one.
The Moon, Detective Yu says Will has friends, and Lila says that no, he doesn't. That's pretty much all that one was. The Hanged Man, Will destroy the reel with Lila's image on it. Lawrence Colt used to summon her, but it didn't work to get rid of her. Lila says she looked like Tanya, only to those working with Lawrence. She says something along the lines of like, but other people are smarter, implying that other people know what she actually looks like, potentially. And then the last one that I got, because Ryder, I think I did what you did for a couple of my endings where I just like exited the game before credits rolled. So the last card I had access to was oh no, that was it. It was the Hanged Man. I didn't any of the interrogation ones. I didn't, or two of the interrogations I didn't get those cards because I just closed the game and it didn't save. So John, blow me away, or Ryder, blow me away.
I only got like 2 or 3 more that you didn't, like
Go
the
ahead,
Hierophant, which is not super interesting. It's just you.
What? That's the most important one.
You hit it then, because I guess I don't remember it too much.
The Hierophant's the most important one. I was trying to look before we started talking on how you got that one.
So you get that by going through the computer completely. The computer that's in the burned down apartment.
Oh, so by using the first gold passcode and everything.
Yeah,
so
you have to finish that path to the end.
So this one's so important because of what happens when you read that tarot card. And so Detective Yu, YU, mentions that, so the only way to get rid of you is to delete all the hosts. And basically she says,
you're right.
She
that is
says,
important.
yes, she agrees with him. She's like, yep, that's how you get rid of me. And so he pulls a gun on her and holds it up in front of her. And you sit there and you can wave the gun all around. Will doesn't move, and you can't do anything else. So I shot her. And so
are you controlling you?
Yes, you control you with the gun. You're controlling the gun. It goes to that first person's perspective.
Yeah.
And you shoot her, and then the game just closes the game. It closes the entire game, not to the main menu. It closes the game. You open up the game again, and you go to that room with Detective Yu again. And instead of Will's body there, it's Lila's face is all that's there now. And Will is gone. And she says, how do you feel? You just killed Will, an innocent boy. But I'm still here. You can't get rid of me.
That's heavy.
And
I forgot that was a part of that ending. I didn't know if that was separate because I went in order and that was the last one I'd unlocked in that path. And so I thought that was maybe something that had to happen at the end of that with Detective Yu. But so, that was pretty crazy.
This was the one this is one of the two that I was saying about a guide. So it turns out once you do that, that's permanent. Every time you go talk to Yu, it's Lila's face there, no longer Will's, because he's actually dead. Detective Yu kills him, and that's permanent for your save file. And so there's another achievement. So you get an achievement for that. It's called Tricked. You're tricked by Lila to kill Will. And there's another one that's the counterpart of that one. It's a hidden achievement. I don't know what it's called because I didn't get it. But in looking up the guide, it says the only way to get this other achievement is during the gun scene. You have to Alt F4 and close the game because you can't do anything else in the game. You literally have to Alt F4 the game. You reload the game, and she laughs and she's like, "Oh, so you figured it out?" And that killing Will would do nothing.
Whenever she appears as Lila, is it just the face they use for Tanya still?
No, well, they're separate faces.
Yeah,
they look almost identical, but they're
not identical. Separate. Okay.
Mm-mm.
So, but if you've already killed Will, there's no way in this save file to do this again and save Will. You literally have to rename your save file in the save directory for the game, make a new one, play through the game to get to that point, and then choose not to kill him to get the achievement. So it was literally not worth doing to me, but that was in the guide. That's the only way to get both. You cannot get both in the same gameplay in the same game loop.
Fascinating.
So yeah, that was one that I missed, but it's fine. So, but Ryder, you said you
The
had two
tower's
more,
cool.
right? Yeah. Oh, that was the tower. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
That
the
one?
tower where there's like the spiral staircase,
So
and
that
you can
was.
describe it.
I was gonna say that was the one I wanted to share with Kurt because he said he didn't get it. So this one I also had to use a guide to do because I would have never thought to do this. So Kurt, you know how whenever you open the house and there is that the calamity happened on 13.11.
Yes.
The only way to do that is resetting the clock on your computer to that date and then having the game open while you do that.
Nope.
And it will load the calamity for you so you
Nope.
can see what happened to Will. And it is so sad.
What happens to Will?
So it shows post killing of Tanya, right? And it shows him there with Lila. Is that right, Ryder?
Mm-hmm.
And
I believe so.
It jumps
At
in.
my interpretation.
This is when she begins to take over Will. So you're teleported to this like different plane of existence, and Lila is running around, and you have to avoid her to get to this tower. It gives you a new objective to get to the tower, and you have to avoid her, dodge and weave, and then you have to climb a spiral staircase, bring her all the way down, and then take an elevator to the top to avoid her to get to the top of the tower, and up there, I believe. Do you remember what happens next, Ryder? I'm drawing a blank. What happens when you get to the tower?
I don't remember either. Lila deleted our memories.
Clearly, she did.
It was the very last thing I did in the game, and it's actually achievement number 16. So it is the final ending.
Yeah,
it is considered to be, I guess, the true ending of the game. But I don't remember.
That's the last one I got too. But basically, she takes over Will's body, and that's when the story jumps forward to where the player character takes over as who we think is Will at the beginning of the game. So yeah, it was a very sad thing to go through and to see Will's perspective on what actually happened. He had no control over what was going on there, but he had to watch Tanya die and Lila take over his body. It was very sad.
So he goes to the theater. I think we've actually might have seen it before. He goes backstage. There's a whole bunch of reels and a projector with 2 reels. He takes off one of the reels. Lila comes in, and then she talks some trash, and he throws the reel away. And she's essentially like, "You really think that you can end this?" And then it game overs you right back to the beginning, which is, I guess, where you wake up and now the story starts. You're possessed by Lila at this point, and Will's gone.
That was it. I took that as when he throws that reel, that's actually his reel. He throws it off his own projector, and that's why...
Thinking he's trying to get rid of hers, maybe?
Yes, it falls down into the boiler room, and that's what you pick up and replace the reel whenever you get that... whenever you get the Wheel of Fortune. You're actually replacing your wheel back where it goes. I mean, that wasn't the joke. It was that's the name of
the achievement name. I know. It's just funny.
But the reason I think that is because whenever you get into there and get the reel from Will, you climb a spiral staircase again. And the wheel's there, or the reel, you get it from yourself because you're the one talking. So you're the one that threw yourself out of your body and let Lila take over.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway,
there's some other stuff that, like, I think it's pretty much a wrap at this point. There's not really too much else to talk about, but I mean, there's some other like details, like in conversations with the detectives, where it comes out that, I think you tell Tanya at one point, your mom was a good mom. She died like 3 years ago. When you're talking to the detectives, if you hit the right facial expressions, my Will ended up spilling the beans and was like, talking about how mom was kind of like toxic and like abusive and like refused to let him have friends or date people, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So essentially, like, mom kind of started this whole cycle by like keeping him closeted and away from people. And then I guess after she died is whenever, cults a lot of times prey on people who have had traumatic life experiences because they're easier to manipulate. And so, it just makes him an easy target for Lila, someone who's domineering like that entity. I don't know. It's very tragic for Will, very tragic for Tanya, who, I mean, it was never expressly told to me, but yeah, I mean, she was cut up and thrown into a dumpster. Just
Yeah. Awful. So I want to ask, there's one more thing I'd like to end on before we begin our posts, not to derail anything, but I wanted to ask, was there anything else you two had about the game itself, like story-wise?
I don't think so. I'm really glad that I asked you guys to play this with me because so many layers of this that just went over my head that we've discussed in these last
it's very complex
hours.
I have one more bombshell to drop on you.
Okay.
I believe it's whenever you talk to Detective Yu about the Tower tarot card, which is what you got after you've seen what happened to Will and what happened to him. She has a conversation with him, and the gist of it was, he says, well, given everything that's happened, and he says, he says, how would we ever get rid of you? And she says, well, I've just enjoyed our talks and you digging deeper into exactly what happened, your desire to know what's going on, how everything played out, and you're checking out every different possibility, all of them, and none of them have happened. None of them are right, none of them are wrong, because they're all continuous. They all happened and none happened. And she says, your desire to dig into this and to keep asking me questions and to keep doing this is fueling my existence. And so that's when I realized that Detective Yu is actually not Detective YU, but Detective YOU, you the player. Yeah. So there you go.
I had that thought before, not to that level, of course, but before I hit the ending with the tower, where I was thinking like there's some like real, meta going on right here about when it said that the only thing keeping Lila around is the fact that other people are aware of her. And I was thinking like, okay, so I'm actively perpetuating this.
Yep.
And then when I hit the tower ending, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, there it is.
So what you're saying, John, is that we have to find everyone who's played this game and kill them.
And everyone that's going to watch this video. So now they all know who Lila is too. You.
We can't post it.
You. So do us a favor and like and subscribe and drop a comment so we know who you are.
Okay.
Yes. Leave your name and address.
I thought you were going to say something horrible, so I'm glad you didn't.
No, I had to drop in the plug,
Yeah, 3 hours in, get that plug in. Yeah, for sure.
For the one person that might make it this far. Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this up. So, just like the end of every Backlog crew, I like to ask your thoughts, like overall opinion on the game, and would you recommend it to someone else? Let's start with the writer.
Overall, I love this game, and I think this is one of those games where like there are a couple of games that I've had, I can think of that maybe left lasting impressions on me, things that I continue to think of afterward. I think there's way more probably movies and books that have done that. As much as I enjoy video games, not many of them really scratch this type of itch, or it just makes me want to continue digging deeper and thinking more and more about it. And the core gameplay mechanics, sometimes they kind of frustrated me because I understand it's part of the fun is that like Will's going to react accordingly, and sometimes I think some of the ways you're supposed to get to certain faces were stupid. Also, some of the ways you're supposed to progress were just a result of trial and error. And I think that in this game's defense, it's a very short game, so it is easy for you to go back and redo paths. It allows you to save at most points, so you can redo something. But there's parts like your fight with Mike or the interrogation where you have a string of like between like Mike like 6 to 7 reactions in the interrogation between the two officers, like 15 reactions, and to get certain endings are dependent on you doing it over and over and over again. And I understand that for a game that has as little like areas as this has, it requires you to continue playing it again. And I did have that interest, but not enough to follow it through to its conclusion. There's some things too that I think are ridiculous, like having changed the date, but I think that is ultimately fun. I'm not going to knock it. It being something that's super hard for me to find. Obviously, someone did find it, so I'm not going to count marks against it. Ultimately, like I said, I love this game. I think it's crazy. I don't really even know how to describe it other than it's crazy. It's a ride. I would recommend it to fans of horror genre, but I couldn't just give this as like a pure recommendation because it's too weird, and I think a lot of people are just going to be like, "What? Nah, it's not for me." But I think if you're open-minded or just a fan of horror, then yes, play it 100%.
John, I'm gonna do mine now and let you
Go ahead.
finish up because you seem to have fallen down the rabbit hole the deepest on this.
What?
I'm gonna echo basically the mechanical stuff that Ryder said, where it's a very interesting game. Mechanically, it can be kind of frustrating with getting some of the endings. But if you're super into it, you're super into it, and you might want to see it through. It's a weird thing to say at the end of a 3-hour video that already spoiled all of the story. But I would recommend this to people who had a group like this of people to play it with and to theory craft as they played or even afterwards just to kind of talk through it and figure it all out. And there's still stuff in this game I'm sure that we did not mention. So if you're interested and even just purely mechanical, the facial stuff and the way that it the meta narrative layers of downloading links and going through files, that's all really fascinating, and I do think it is worth playing unless you find a lot of fulfillment in like online social circles with Reddit or whatever, figuring all this out. It might not be very interesting to do on your own, but if you have a group, I think it's definitely worth playing through this game and having a lengthy discussion about it. Maybe not a 3-hour one, but
yeah, 4 hours. Yeah.
I mean, I've had a great time. This has been really fun, but maybe not for everybody.
Okay. All right. Well, all good.
Yeah, go for it, John.
Tell us how much you did not like this game that you spent 9 hours on.
1 out of 10.
I was very confused whenever we murdered Martha. I'm going to preface this. That's when I almost messaged Kurt and was going to ask, what have you got me playing? And then it kept going. And then Kurt said, I fell down the cult rabbit hole here. And I had to know it all. I wanted to know everything. I feel like I have probably 90% of it. I don't feel like I've processed all this information, but I feel like talking to you two has really helped me piece a bit more of this together and as well get more confused at the same time. So it's a good job on us for that. Overall, I would recommend this game. I mean, honestly, it's not that hard to play. I think the people I know that like games, for the most part, they would like this. So yeah, I would recommend this game. Just blanket statement. So, overall, I had a great time, and I didn't expect it, but I really enjoyed it.
Wow, this is not I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to be gross to say, this is not I think the most fun game that we've played is Backlog Crew. Because there's a couple, maybe 10 or so, 8 games. I don't know. There's something like Mass Effect that it just ultimately I love. I think that, Sly Cooper was a lot of fun. The the real-time strategy game, Slay the Overworld, War for the Overworld.
Yeah.
Super fun. All those, I think I actually enjoyed the gameplay more on those. I could go back to them more, but this is the
story,
probably most fun I've had for the sake of doing this as a group collectively to talk about it, because I was just so weirded out start to finish and just so ready to talk and see what y'all were thinking about this.
This is like a mystery book club is basically what this was.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all so much for like doing this with me. Because again, I know it was a weird pick, and so when I threw it out there, I was really worried people were just going to be like, "No, I don't want to play this weird looking game." But I'm really excited because there's just a really fascinating experience and fascinating conversations to have about it. So thank you both, and thank you if you've made it this far for watching. We're just a few guys who like to talk about video games. So if you enjoyed it, like it, share it with a friend. We have not decided what our next game is going to be, but we'll certainly be back with another episode of Backlog Crew. Thank you for watching.
The name is Lila.